So guys, what if Naruto was lust god and onepice? Sakura. Naruto yelled from the ground below the window to her second-story room. Sakura. He yelled again when he didn't receive a prompt enough reply. A few moments later, the window opened and a pink-haired girl stuck her head out the window. What are you yelling about this time? She asked him, but thankfully he didn't notice any real irritation in her voice. Naruto Namikaze had learned long ago that calling for Sakura Haruno in this manner too early in the morning wasn't good for his health, and although had held off until 9:30, that was still a somewhat risky time. But given how important today's news was, he couldn't bring himself to wait any longer. I came to say goodbye, he informed her, I'm leaving the island today to join the Marines. That's all that racket, Sakura. A voice called out from somewhere behind Sakura. It's Naruto, Mom, she replied. He came to say he's leaving to join the Marines. Again? Her mother inquired. Well, tell him I'm serving Inagi tonight and he's welcome to eat with us when he gets back. She makes it sound like she doesn't believe they'll go through with it, Naruto complained to Sakura. I'll have you know I'm completely serious. We know you're serious, Sakura told him, but you've tried this about a dozen times in the last 10 years, and Mayor Sarutobi and his wife has caught you every time, with a boat docked here, you know they'll have it watched. It's different this time, Naruto insisted. I have a plan that's sure to work, so if you have anything to say to me, say it now, it might be a long time before we see each other again. Okay, goodbye Naruto, see you for dinner, she told him cheerfully. Annoyed, Naruto turned around and stalked off, Sakura laughing at his antics as he departed. They may doubt him, but had been planning this attempt for a while, and he wasn't about to fail again. He was getting off of Leaf Island. Not that he had anything against the island, but the whole population of 800 people felt positively confined to Naruto. He had much bigger dream than possibly replacing the old man as mayor someday, and sure, had Miss Sakura, having been the only other kid his age growing up, they'd become friends almost by default, but there was a whole world of exciting people to meet and things to do. And today it would all start, he promised himself. Had worn his favorite outfit to commemorate the occasion, a white shirt and white pants. The shirt had blue seagull designs on its sleeves. It wasn't an official Marine uniform, but it was his own personal tribute to his career choice. He walks into shadowy area of the village, stay hidden from sight. It didn't take him that long to reach the small warehouse on the edge of the village. Sneaking inside as quietly as he could, he closed the door behind him, then grabbing an empty crate from the back, he moved it next to a large pile of similar crates near the entrance. Opening the top, he climbed inside and closed it behind him. Previously had always tried to sneak directly onto the ship, but as Sakura had said, the old man and granny was sure to have it watched. But if he hid among the cargo the village was selling to that merchant ship, they'd carry him on board themselves, and had appeared to be nothing more than another box of goods. Previously had always tried to sneak directly onto the ship, but as Sakura had said, the old man and granny was sure to have it watched. But if he hid among the cargo the village was selling to that merchant ship, they'd carry him on board themselves, and had appeared to be nothing more than another box of goods. He didn't have to wait long before had heard the door open, and soon after felt his crate being lifted. He remained just as motionless as he could, barely daring to after what seemed like an eternity to Naruto's frayed nerves. The box was set down. He then waited for what must have been 20 minutes listening for any other movement. Finally, he decided to risk lifting the lid to peek out, only to find himself staring at the face of Mayor Sarutobi, who was nonchalantly smoking a pipe, and his wife Bawako, giving him an angry stare. What are you two OWWW? Without warning, Bawako punched Naruto in the head, creating a large bump on his head. We're not on the ship, and we're in my office, Sarutobi replied. We had you follow, so, when you tried your little stunt, I just had you carried here. Looking around, Naruto confirmed this to be the case. They were in the mayor's office. It was clean and neat, books lying about in an organized manner, and his large desk was completely covered in paperwork dealing with village affairs. Naruto climbed out of the crate, realizing there was no longer any point to remaining inside. Garrison Sarutobi was the mayor of Leaf Island. He holds that all the people of Konoha are a family, and that the mayor is chiefly responsible for that family's well-being. A wise, strict and caring leader, nobody in Leaf Island complains of his leadership style. His wife, Bawako Sarutobi, seemed to be as wise and intelligent as her husband, giving somewhat sage-like advice to the people of the village. She also seems to be very strongly opinionated about women, stating that they were far stronger than men because they can endure childbirth while men cannot. She also wasn't above reprimanding Naruto for running off to join the Marines. Why do you two have to keep stopping me? Naruto asked accusingly. Because with your father gone, we are your guardians, Sarutobi told him, and we are not about to let you run off without understanding the full implications of your actions. I may have bought that story in the past, but I'm 17 now, Naruto retorted. I do understand the risks involved. Yes, being a Marine can get me killed, and this island is on the Grand Line, so it's even more dangerous. I know all that. And what about the risks to the other villagers you're leaving would entail? Bawako questioned him. Many of them have expressed concerns to me and Sarutobi about your desires to leave. Considering what happened after your father left, I can't say I blame them. That had nothing to do with him. Naruto insisted angrily. If it was really some curse because a villager left the island, why did it happen many years after he left? I'm not going to stay here because of a bunch of superstitious villagers who should be grateful my father came back to save them after how they treated him. All for the sake to join the Marines. Buwako questioned him on that subject. You are addicted to Naruto, so addicted you wear that silly outfit which is proof of your obsession. I'm not addicted, Naruto countered. Yes, you are. Buwako retort. You had this naive upside-down view of the world outside our island Naruto. You believe Marines are heroes who never done anything wrong, and pirates are villains that done nothing but evil. You barely see what is beyond our island Naruto, and think it's divided by black and white, when it's nothing but gray. Sooner or later it will get your misinterpretation of it will get you killed or worse. Naruto stared at Granny Buwako before he asked Granny Buwako. You never had any issue with Dad when he was a Marine officer. Why are you so determined in keeping me and joining the Marines? Buwako was about to react when her husband stepped in says Buwako let me talk to Naruto alone. Looking back to her husband and Naruto, Buwako replied fine, perhaps you will talk some sense into him, especially his foolish notion of joining the Marines. After Buwako left Naruto asked, why is Granny Buwako got against me of joining the Marines? Buwako might tell you someday, said Sarutobi, but the reason she doesn't want you go out in the world recklessly was because she was close friends to your grandmother Naruko Namikaze and a second mother to your father Minato. Naruko Namikaze was the mother of Minato and Naruto's grandmother. She lived and died long before Naruto was born. Minato was so close to his mother, he named his son after her. Well, it's my decision now old man now that I'm legal age, Naruto insisted. We still don't feel you're ready to make that decision yourself, Sarutobi told him, but if y'all calm down a little, I have something for you I do think you're old enough for now. What's that? Naruto asked, curiosity tempering his anger at least for the moment. Motioning Naruto to follow, he led him to a mid-sized wooden chest in a corner of the room. This was found on your father's ship after he had died, Sarutobi told him. Really? Naruto asked excitedly, then narrowed his eyes and looked accusingly at the old man. Why didn't you give this to me before now? You were too young, he responded. I didn't feel right opening it myself, but for all I know it could be full of guns and swords. I would be irresponsible giving that to a young child, and more recently I was just afraid that whatever was in there would only reinforce that foolish notion to join the Marines, but you're old enough now that you deserve to have it. I'm going to go open this, thanks, old man, Naruto told him, then quickly grabbed the chest and rushed out of the room. Hold it Naruto, Sarutobi calls out to him, stopping him in his tracks. There is one more thing I need to give you before you leave. Turning around to face the old man, Naruto asked what is it? You should take this, he says, holding up a gold necklace with a large red gemstone. It has a whirlwind symbol on it. What's that? Naruto asked, curious of what the gold necklace is. This is something your father gave to me before he died, Sarutobi told him. He wanted to pass this on to you because this comes from your mother. My mother? Naruto repeated. Now Naruto never knew who his mother was, and once he asked, his father refused to talk about it. Nobody in the island knew his Naruto's mother is, for the only one who knew was Minato. Looks like ruby, Naruto examined the necklace. I bet I could get a lot of money for it. Naruto? Sarutobi retorts sharply, how can you be talking about selling it? Your father told me this is supposed to be the only thing you have from your mother. Yeah, well, my mother is long dead, Naruto replied, since well before I was old enough to remember her. It's not like there's a lot of sentimental value to this. Well, your father never told us about your mother. I can tell he loved her very much, Sarutobi stated. He wanted me to give this to you as sentimental value from your mother, and if he was still alive and found out you plan on selling it for cash, he would hit you in the head much harder than Buwako. Bold to picture of it make just as good of a clue as the real thing? Naruto asked. Sarutobi just glared at him silently and coldly in response. Alright already, I won't sell it, Naruto conceded, putting it around his neck instead, which seemed to mollify him. Naruto didn't know why the old man was getting so upset about this in the first place. It wasn't his mother they were talking about. Leaving the mayor's office, Naruto begins heading back home. The chest was a little heavy in his hands, but Naruto was able to make a decent pace, while still trying not to jostle the contents too much. He was near to his house when he saw Sakura walking down the street toward him. Back already? She asked him, I take it things didn't go as planned. Not exactly, but there'll be other ships, Naruto replied optimistically. They are taking it surprisingly well this time, Sakura noted, then focused her attention on his newest prize. Isn't that chest from the mayor's office? She asked him, frowning a bit at whatever picture her mind was putting together of the events that led to him taking possession of it. You didn't steal it to get back at them for stopping you, did you? She queried, the note of disapproval now clear in her voice. No, the old man gave it to me, Naruto corrected her cheerfully. Head says that this belonged to my father. I'm bringing it home to see what's inside. Well, it makes sense he would choose today to give it to you, Sakura replied. What do you mean by that? Naruto asked, racking his brain for any reason why today would be special, but not coming up with anything. You must not have heard, she told him. The merchants decided to relax in the bar for a bit after finishing their business. In addition to that, a marine ship just entered the bay. They're just staying long enough to stock up on provisions, and then they're leaving. Really? Naruto asked enthusiastically, a marine ship? Yeah, we almost never have two ships here at the same time. He probably wanted to distract you for a few hours until they've left since it'd be harder to guard both of them. That did sound just like the old man too. Naruto was tempted to head to the bay right at that moment just to spite him, but even if it was playing into his hands, Naruto cold leave without seeing what was in the chest. Thanks, Sakura, he told her sincerely. It'll just have to finish going through this before they leave, so I can't waste any more time talking. But that he rushed off down the cobblestone path through the center of the town until he reached his house. It was a small single-story building left to him by his father. Setting down the chest, he opened the door, slid the chest inside, and let the door close behind him. Wasting no time, he opened the lid and began going through the contents. Looking inside, he saw a small telescope sitting atop one of his father's marine uniforms. Moving the uniform, he spotted 3 log poses, although on closer inspection, 2 of them were eternal poses. One was labeled Marineford, and the other had Leaf Island scrawled on it. That last one must have cost his father quite a bit. Custom-made eternal poses weren't cheap, and he highly doubted anyone else would have cared enough to make one for their little backwater island. The final item in the chest was another, much smaller chest. Naruto quickly pulled it out and opened the lid, but he certainly wasn't expecting to see a piece of fruit in it. Was the mayor playing a joke on him? There was no way a piece of fruit would sit in that chest for more than a decade without rotting. There was one way. The fruit was unlike any he'd ever seen before, sort of shaped like a pear, but red in color with purple spots. Could it be a devil fruit? Almost as soon as the possibility occurred to him, Naruto made up his mind. Grabbing the fruit, he took a large bite out of it. The flavor was unpleasant, but he ignored it and finished off the rest of the fruit. He left nothing behind, as it seemed to lack a stem or core of any sort. Thoughts of what amazing new power he might have received were swirling through his mind, but Naruto pushed them aside to focus on trying to confirm he actually had eaten a devil fruit. Those who had eaten one were supposed to be unable to swim, but risking drowning didn't seem like the best way to find out, and he didn't want anyone else to know about this just yet anyway. He knew some devil fruit users could transform their bodies, so he decided to try that first. He attempted to will his body to transform in some way, but after several minutes of that, nothing had happened. Well, maybe he could shoot something out of his hands or something like that. Refocusing his will on trying to emit something, he felt some sort of energy stirring in his body. Willing the energy to move, he felt it almost leap out of him. Looking toward where it went, he examined the result of his efforts and smiled. This had a lot of potential. 00000. Naruto sat looking out his window with the telescope head found in the chest. He had a good view of the bay from there and could see that both ships were now preparing to leave. Still, he waited a little longer. He'd have to time this almost perfectly. The marine ship finished preparations first, and Naruto saw them getting ready to raise anchor. It was time to put his plan into action. Slipping out his window, he began to dash towards the marine vessel. It was larger than most ships that came to port, being more than twice the size of the merchant ship dock at a couple hundred yards from it. Just seeing the seagull painted on the ship's flag gave Naruto an extra burst of energy as he ran, determined that today would finally be the day he joined. Out of the corner of his eye, he caught a villager running after him. Naruto grinned to himself, realizing his speed had forced the man to abandon his attempts at stealth, but his smile vanished when he noticed that despite his best efforts, the man was slowly gaining on him. He just hoped he could stay ahead of him long enough. As he approached the ship, he saw a second villager moving to intercept him, but Naruto continued to run for the ship. He was only about a dozen feet from the second man, with the first having closed the distance to about half that, when he took the 2 spherical objects had been holding in his hands and threw one at each man. The smoke bombs went off, obscuring them from view, and in the confusion, Naruto made a sharp turn to the left and changed course toward the merchant vessel. The 2 men who had been chasing him did not immediately give pursuit, thanks to the smokescreen, had traversed most of the 200 yards when still another man attempted to intercept him. He prepared a third smoke bomb for the man who must have been assigned to watch this ship and threw it at his feet, but this one was prepared for the tactic and continued through the smoke, only to seize Naruto by the arm. The other 2 men quickly caught up and surrounded him. All 3 of them began talking over each other, trying to berate him for his latest escape attempt, but Naruto tuned them out, smiling to himself. Then, in a puff of smoke, he vanished. 00000. Meanwhile, the real Naruto was already racing toward the marine ship that had begun to pull out to sea. This was cutting it kind of close. It was going to be difficult to reach the ship, and he didn't exactly have the option of swimming out to it. He was only a few yards from the shore when his clone's memories integrated into his own. Ignoring them, he ran the last few yards at top speed and then leaped toward the departing ship with all his might. The ship was too far away for him to jump, yet Naruto was already ready for a move he learned during his years in Leaf Island. Depot. After joining the Marines, Minato brought with him resources and supplies back to Leaf Island to help improve the village. He also brought him knowledge and skills to boost up the village's defenses, such as Rakushiki. Rakushiki is a special, superhuman martial art style, consisting of 6 superhuman techniques. Those who mastered the Rakushiki will have the strength of 100 men. Many of the village's best fighters studied and trained in Rakushiki. 2 out of 10 become masters of the art. Naruto especially trained in Rakushiki. Driven by his ambitions to join the Marines, Naruto studied Rakushiki, mastering 3 of the 6 Rakushiki techniques. Saru, Geppo, and Kamii. He felt a moment of fear seeing all that water beneath him, but it passed as soon as his feet landed solidly on the deck. This startled several of the Marines on the deck who obviously hadn't been expecting his last-second arrival, and he found more than a few guns suddenly pointed at him. "Who are you? What are you doing on board?" One of the uniformed Marines demanded of him. "Relax, men," another voice called out. "It doesn't look like he means us any harm." Turning toward the voice, he saw a large bearded man wearing an officer's coat over his suit. The other Marines followed his orders and lowered their guns. "Yeah, I'm here to enlist," Naruto told them cautiously, much happier with the guns no longer aimed at him and not wanting to do anything that would lead to them returning to their previous positions. "Are you the captain?" "But I am," he replied jovially. "Now would you mind telling me why you felt the need to make such a flashy entrance?" "Most of the villagers are extremely superstitious," Naruto replied. "They fear if they let anyone leave the island something disastrous is going to happen, but it's always been my dream to join the Marines like my father did, so I wasn't about to let that stop me." "I think I've heard of that superstition before," the captain said thoughtfully. "Wait a minute, I knew Leaf Island sounded familiar. You're Admiral Minato Namikaze's son, aren't you?" "That's right," Naruto confirmed proudly. "Naruto Namikaze, reporting for duty, sir." "Well then," the captain said, "if you turn out to be half the man your father will be, it'd be nothing short of dereliction of duty if I stopped you from joining." "Oops, sorry about that," the captain added bashfully, realizing what he'd just said. "Bad choice of words, I didn't mean to bring that up." "Don't worry about it," Naruto told the man. "I must say that was quite the jump to get on here," he said, obviously wanting to change the subject. "You must have had a lot of training already." "That was nothing," Naruto boasted. "We're a small island in the middle of a major route on the Grand Line. Everyone is taught to defend themselves. I've been helping fight off pirates for years." "Good to hear," the captain told him, back to his cheerful demeanor already. "I'd wager you have a bright future ahead of you. Marineford isn't too far out of our way. I'll have you there in no time, then you can start your official training." This was turning out to be a near perfect day for Naruto. He only wished he could see the old man's face when he figured out that the chest had given Naruto had been the very thing that made his escape possible. 0000. Saratobi stood watching the ship depart through a pair of binoculars. Had the fruit's power been teleportation? Or maybe some type of illusion? Whatever it was, it would certainly aid the boy in his endeavors, and the villagers could hardly blame him. After all, how was he supposed to know Naruto would have access to a devil fruit? It's not like he'd given it to the boy or anything, right? Yet he knows his wife will blame him for leaving the devil fruit in the box in the first place. "Good luck, Naruto," he said out loud. "Make your father proud." Naruto couldn't help but gawk at the size of Marineford as he made his way through the city. Had heard of what cities were like from some of the merchants that visited their island, had even seen some pictures, but none of that had prepared him for being here and having his senses assailed. There was so much going on and so many people that it was almost overwhelming, and you could easily get lost among all the twists and turns on the buildings. Naruto was suddenly very grateful for the detailed directions the captain had given him before they'd parted ways. Examining them again, he continued along his path, occasionally stopping just to marvel at his surroundings, but he soon found himself standing in front of the recruiting office. Opening the door, he entered, finding himself in a small lobby with a few chairs on the side. There was a desk across the room with a woman sitting at it. She wasn't wearing a uniform, but she was the only one in the lobby, so he walked across the room to her desk. "Can I help you?" she asked him. "I'm here to sign up for the Marines," Naruto responded. Just like that. She asked him, "You don't have any questions or concerns?" "Nope," he answered. "I've wanted to be a Marine all my life." "Well, that's certainly refreshing," she told him. "Usually, our recruiters have to twist arm to get anyone to enlist." The woman then grabbed a paper from a stack on her desk and handed it to Naruto along with a pen. "Just fill this out and sign your name at the bottom," she told him. Leaning over the desk, Naruto began to do just that. The form was pretty basic personal information about himself and any health issues he might have, so Naruto progressed through it pretty quickly. "Our next basic training group begins in 4 days, the woman informed him as he was nearly finished. "This packet will tell you where and when you need to show up and give you general information on what your service will entail." Finishing up and signing his name, Naruto traded the form for the folder she was holding out to him. "Do you have a place to stay until then?" she asked him. "Not exactly," Naruto replied, having sort of assumed you would just start your training as soon as you signed up. "Well, do you have any funds to get you by until then?" she queried. Some, Naruto replied vaguely. If you head down the street to the right, you'll come to an inn by the name of the Seagull's Nest, she told him. The Marine Force will subsidize your stay there, just show them the packet and they'll give you a discount. Thank you, Naruto replied graciously. Also, do you want me to sign you up for the officer exam? She inquired. If so, you'll need to show up at 2 p.m. the day before basic training starts. Here's an exam to become an officer? Naruto asked. What's on it? There are 2 parts, she told him, a test of your combat skills and a general exam that covers everything from marine rules and navigation to general history. The curriculum is actually in that packet, but if you're hoping to become an officer, you may want me to sign you up for the next exam instead. 3 days isn't much time to study for it. When is the next exam? Naruto asked, considering her offer. A month after this one, she answered. As much as he would like more time to fully prepare, Naruto doubted the small stash of berries Head brought with him would last that long. No matter how much that inn was subsidized, it probably won't even feed him for a whole month. No, this one will be fine, he told her. Besides, he'll ace the combat portion easily. Taking out a small piece of paper, she began writing on it, then handed it to Naruto. This is directions to the Marineford Public Library, she stated. It has any number of books that cover the material on the test. You don't have a lot of time to study, but every little bit helps. Thanks again, Naruto responded earnestly. You've been a huge help. Just doing my job, she replied modestly, and good luck with the exam. Waving goodbye, Naruto left the building and then examined the directions to the library. Head there first as it was already well into the afternoon, and he wanted to make sure it didn't close before he arrived. The directions were easy enough to follow, but despite that, when Head completed them he didn't see the library anywhere. Well, the last instruction had said to take the second right, but maybe she hadn't counted that small alley Head passed as the first one. Anyway, he should be close to it, so if he got to higher ground He'd likely be able to see it. That in mind, he jumped onto the roof of the nearest building and began to scan for anything that might be a library. Then again, what exactly did a library look like from the outside? Had never seen one before. Maybe it was one of the buildings He'd been standing by and he just didn't recognize it. But one thing he did notice quickly was that he wasn't the only person up there. Just a couple of houses away was a man with long, spiky, white hair, looking through a telescope at something in the distance, and the man was a marine officer, judging by the uniform he was wearing. Curious as to what brought him there, Naruto approached the man. What are you doing? Naruto asked when he was only a few feet away. Ah. Nothing. The man yelled out, fumbling with the telescope as he was startled by Naruto's question. Turning around, the man seemed to calm down when he got a look at the person who had just surprised him. Seeing the other man's face for the first time, he was drawn to the red vertical lines beneath each of his eyes. Was that painted on or some kind of tattoo? I mean, I was simply keeping a lookout on the area, the man said. Contrary to his previous claim, I am a marine, you know. I should be the one asking you what you're doing up here. You aren't causing any mischief, are you? I'm just looking for the library, Naruto answered, hoping there weren't any rules against being on someone else's roof. The last thing he needed was to get himself in trouble with the Marines, only minutes after Head signed up. Ah, if you're looking for something to read, this is your lucky day. I happen to be an author as well as a Marine, he declared proudly. Pulling a small orange book out of a coat pocket, he held it out expectantly toward Naruto. Thanks for the offer, Naruto responded, trying to decline as politely as possible. But what I need is some material to study for the officer exam. I'm joining the Marines myself. Still, you don't want to work too hard or you'll just get all stressed out, he replied, holding the book out insistently. Believe me, this book is great for relieving stress. Naruto was saved from having to respond when a third figure landed next to the two of them. He was another Marine officer who looked older than the first, not that either of them would ever be considered young. There you are, Jiraiya, the new arrival called out. I've been looking all over for you, and here you are trying to corrupt our youth again. Now you went and got me spotted, the man apparently named Jiraiya said to Naruto accusingly, before turning to the other man. What do you want, Garp? He asked. Our Garp, Naruto asked the older man excitedly, as in Vice Admiral Monkey D. Garp. Garp the hero. The man who fought Goldie, Roger, the king of the pirates so many times. Hey, why no reaction to my name? Jiraiya questioned him. I'm a vice admiral too and famous as both a marine and an author. The kid just has good taste, that's all, Garp countered. It's an honor to meet you, sir, Naruto told Garp, bowing respectfully to man. If it's not too much trouble, I'm going to be taking the officer exam myself in a few days, and I would be grateful for any advice you could give me. Let me see, Garp said thoughtfully. Actually, there is one thing, remember that the written exam comes first. What was Garp trying to tell him? Maybe that he shouldn't warm up before going to the exam, because he'd just be sitting for a while. No, there had to be more to it than that, but Naruto couldn't figure out what it was. He didn't want to look stupid in front of such a great hero, but eventually curiosity won out over his desire to impress Garp. I'm sorry, but what exactly do you mean by that? Naruto asked hesitantly. It's just that I got a little confused on that point back when I took the exam and beat up the proctor, Garp declared without the slightest hint he was embarrassed by that admission. They caused quite a fuss over that, but it all worked out in the end. Naruto stood dumbfounded at the response. Was that supposed to be a joke? Seeing as Garp was now laughing at his own words, so he supposed that could be it. Ready to reconsider exactly which officer here you should be admiring? Jiraiya asked him, and just so you know, the library is 1 block north of here. There's a big sign, so you can't miss it. I doubt Muscle Brain here even knows what a library is. Thanks, Naruto replied to a bit shakily, still somewhat shocked by Garp's advice. But pulling himself together, he decided to depart. He still needed to get to the library before it closed, and was no longer sure he wanted to continue talking to these two, bidding them farewell. He jumped off the roof and began heading north as directed. 00000. Not bad for a recruit, Jiraiya said as the two watched him leap casually off the roof. He even managed to sneak up on me, granted, I was a little distracted at the time. Yeah, Garp agreed. It's good to see at least one kid with talent who doesn't want to be a pirate. It's all that fool Roger's fault. Why even my own grandson talks of being king of the pirates, but he'll beat that notion out of him yet. You have a grandson? Jiraiya asked in surprise. I didn't even know you had any children. Garp replied, that was supposed to be a secret. Don't worry, Jiraiya told him casually, I won't tell anyone young Patrick wants to be a pirate. His name is Luffy, you idiot, Garp fired back, really, and you say I'm the dumb one. Yeah, you're just too smart for me, Jiraiya deadpanned. He wondered about this Luffy, and why he was supposed to be a secret. That kid, who'd just run off, interested him too. He reminded him of someone, but he couldn't quite figure out who. He'd worry about those mysteries later. For now he had to try and get rid of Garp so he could go back to his research. 00000. Naruto set down the stack of books he'd borrowed from the library on a desk in the small, Spartan room he'd just got at the inn. It was a lot of material for anyone to get through in just 3 days, but Naruto wasn't just anyone. Naruto summoned 10 clones, which he had discovered to be his limit, dividing up the books between them. They all found a space in the now rather crowded room and began studying. Each clone could absorb a great amount of information than a normal person, and the combined effort will be enough to boost his skills and experiences vastly. At night he learned another interesting fact about his power. Also, his clones didn't need to eat or sleep. They also remained even as the real Naruto slept, studying on through the night, and despite some minor complaining on the part of his clones, they continued studying 24 hours a day right up until noon on the day of the exam. He could probably study for another hour, but he wanted to leave himself plenty of time to get there in case he got lost in the city. Banishing his clones, he headed for the door and fell to the ground in pain, as it suddenly felt as if he had a dozen drills simultaneously trying to bore their way into his head. He tried to ward them off with his hands to no effect. Finally, he got some relief as his consciousness faded. 00000. Naruto woke up with the worst headache he'd had in his entire life. Through the pain he tried to collect his thoughts and figure out what had happened. Was this a hangover or something? Had he gone drinking to celebrate his joining the Marines? But he couldn't even remember taking the exam. The exam? He finally remembered what had caused him to pass out. It seemed he wasn't able to handle the flood of a combined 15 days worth of memories. Rushing to the window he saw the sun already setting low on the horizon. He was late. Opening the window, he jumped out to the street below, stumbling as he felt another surge of pain, but he grit his teeth and began to run off toward the building he was supposed to have been at hours ago. Arriving, he was horrified to find the place empty, save for a few Marines. He quickly approached the nearest one. "Who's in charge here?" he asked the man. "That would be Lieutenant Commander Iruka over there," he replied, pointing to a dark-haired man on the far side of the room who was looking over a stack of papers. Thanking the man, he hurried over to Iruka. "Iruka, sir," he called out to him, Naruto Namikaze, here for the exam, sorry I'm late." "So you're the missing recruit," Iruka replied, "and you're more than just late, you missed it entirely. I thought you'd changed your mind and run off." "I would never do that," Naruto insisted. "I just had some extenuating circumstances that kept me from arriving on time. Is there any way I can take a makeup exam? Or I could just take next month's exam." "I'm sorry, but there is no makeup exam, and you're scheduled to begin tomorrow," Iruka informed him to Naruto's dismay. Timeliness is important for an officer as well. Iruka had a stern face that seemed to break no argument, but Naruto wouldn't be deterred. His dream wasn't to become a commonly enlisted Marine. He was going to be an admiral, like his father, maybe even make fleet admiral someday. "That's not fair," Naruto complained. "I made one little mistake and now I can't become an officer. There's got to be some way." Iruka's face softened a bit at this, actually showing a hint of compassion for his plight. "If you're that determined, there is a way," Iruka replied. "Regardless of whether you pass the test or not, everyone has a month of basic training. Those who passed will undergo a different schedule designed for officer candidates. However, at the end of the month, there is another exam. And I can take that one?" Naruto asked hopefully. That's right, he confirmed, it's a much harder exam. The majority of the officer candidates fail to pass it each year. Add in the fact that you won't have the benefit of the month of training for it, and not many who fail the first exam even bother to attempt it, but a few try each year, and it's not unheard of for one or two to succeed. Thank you very much, Naruto all but yelled at the man, you have no idea how much this means to me. Instead of thanking me, just make sure you show up on time in the future, Iruka replied, trying to take on a stern look again, but unable to completely hide a small smile. I will, Naruto promised and ran out of the room back toward the inn. That'd make sure he passed the next one, although maybe he'd stick to more normal means for studying this time. His headache still hadn't abated, but a quick examination of his memories showed the effort hadn't been a complete waste, as everything his clones had done seemed to be there. 00000. Naruto walked down the barracks looking for room 121. He hadn't repeated his tardiness from the day before, and after completing all the necessary paperwork, had been given his room assignment. Finding his room, he entered to discover that it was already occupied. This wasn't unexpected as he already knew he'd have a roommate. The real shocker was that the occupant was the largest dog had ever seen. Seriously, the white-furred animal looked large enough for him to ride. The dog was looking just as intently back at him. They were still just standing there staring at each other when another boy walked up beside him. Oh, you must be my roommate, the boy said. I'm Kiba Inuzuka, and this is Akamaru. They're letting you keep your dog here? Naruto asked disbelievingly. This is more than just my dog, Hess my partner, Kiba answered. We're from the Inuzuka tribe of Inuzuka Island. I think I heard of the Inuzuka tribe, says Naruto. The people on Inuzuka Island are known to be savage fighters that fought with the ferocity and strength of a wild animal, and they are also known for their use of dogs as fighting companions, and are easily identified by the distinctive red fang markings on their cheeks. Yeah, Kiba agreed, but they still won't let me use him for the combat portion of the exam. I would pass if they had. I mean, I've never even practiced fighting on my own. Naruto examined the other boy. He was brown-haired and about the same height as him. He was also the second person he'd met this week who had red lines painted or tattooed or something beneath his eyes. Although they were much wider than Jiraiya's had been, maybe there was some meaning to it. So, are you going to try to take the next exam too? Naruto asked him, trying to make some friendly conversation. You bet I am, Kiba replied. I had the highest score of anyone who failed. I just need a little practice fighting without Akamaru and it'll breeze through the exam. How about you, what was your score? Well, I sort of missed taking the exam, Naruto said bashfully. What happened, you sleep through it? Kiba inquired. No, Naruto replied before reconsidering. Actually, I guess I kind of did, but it's complicated than that. You see, I have a devil fruit power. Ah, cool, so does Akamaru, the other boy replied cheerfully. Your dog ate a devil fruit? Naruto asked doubtfully, wondering if he was serious. Yeah, he eaten the Zmkim no Mi. He explained to him of the details. It's a paramecia-type devil fruit, which allows him to enhance his powers and skills, or other, whenever he used the fruit's powers his fur turns red. Also, Kiba added, Akamaru is a powerful fighter in his own right, and he is much smarter than other dogs. Hess an excellent team player, right Akamaru? Akamaru barked in response, and Naruto wondered if Hess intelligent enough to understand every word they're saying. The owl'll have to show me his power sometime, Naruto said with genuine interest, but I can show you my power right here. With that, he summoned 3 clones and was pleased by the suitably odd look he received from his roommate. Akamaru meanwhile was going from one to the next, sniffing them all. Are they all real? Kiba queried. Well, they're all solid, Naruto replied, but all of them except the original will just disappear in a puff of smoke if they take any significant blows. Naruto then banished them all, which startled Akamaru, who had just been examining one of the clones. I also remember everything that happened to them after they vanished like that, he continued. I was using that to cram in some studying at several times the normal rate. Unfortunately, I kept it up so long it was sort of a memory overload that knocked me out cold. I didn't wake up until the exam was over. That's a tough break, Kiba commiserated, but that means you didn't even really fail, so you might have an easy time with the second test. Anyway, what made you want to join the Marines? My father was an admiral, Naruto replied proudly. It's always been my dream to follow in his footsteps. Wow. He made it all the way to an admiral, Kiba asked. My family has been in the Marines for generations, and none of us ever made it that far. My great-grandfather was a commodore, and my mother is already a captain, so she might go even further, but not many people make it to admiral. There's only, like, 3 of them right now. Further conversation was put on hold as 3 other recruits showed up the door, one with a face that strongly reminded him of a rat, and 2 hulking brutes behind Rat Boy was holding a clipboard in front of him that he was reading at the moment. Room 121, he muttered to himself. That would make the occupants Kiba Inuzuka and Naruto Namikaze. My name is Nezumi Kaiten Jr., and is that a dog? Yeah, that's my partner, Kiba replied. But how did you know Naruto and I would be in this room? I have connections, Nezumi replied, having recompassed himself. That's what I'm here, for a few favors, here and there. I can pull some strings and make life a bit easier for you. I see here that you received the lowest score on the officer exam, Naruto, so you could use all the help you can get. Hey, Naruto replied, disgruntled by his words, if you're here with us, that means you failed too, so don't act so high and mighty. Heavens no, Nezumi answered, I never even took the exam, I have no desire to be an officer, there's too much work involved, I'll simply graduate an enlisted man, then my father, Captain Nezumi, will make sure I'm assigned to his ship and it's the easy life from there. Wait, is Nezumi your family name? Naruto asked. It's my given name, the rat-faced recruit answered. It's family tradition that the oldest son is always named Nezumi, but back to business, I'm looking for a few more subordinates under my wing. All you had to do was a few simple tasks every now and then, in exchange, I pull some strings and get you on my father's crew when we graduate, a nice simple assignment in East Blue. You could hardly ask for a safer job in the Marines. Thanks, but I'll pass, Naruto said firmly, unlike you, I want to be an officer. But how poorly you did on the first test. Nezumi asked dubiously, I can see how you scored so low, you're not too bright to pass up an offer like this. Naruto became quite steamed at the other boy's words. He wanted to give him a nice punch to the jaw to shut him up, but realized starting a fight on his first day wasn't the best idea, so he went with plan B. Get out, he ordered Nezumi coldly. Well, that's rude, he replied, I haven't even had a chance to finish speaking with Kiba. You heard him, Kiba interjected, get out of here, we're sick of looking at your ugly face. It's your choice, Nezumi answered smugly, but don't come crying to me when you realize this is a mistake, I don't give second chances. Having said his piece, he turned and walked away, his two lackeys following behind him. Naruto stood watching them retreat, taking a few deep breaths to calm himself. We should probably get changed into our uniforms, Kiba suggested, we need to be outside for basic training pretty soon. Agreeing, the two of them did just that, leaving Akamaru behind, they went outside, joined up with a growing group of recruits and waited. Soon a young purple-haired woman came out, wearing a revealing marine outfit. My name is Commodore Anko Midarashi, she announced to the assembled recruits, and for the next 12 weeks ago, you maggots are in my care, it is my job to turn you all into marine soldiers. And make no mistake, you're going to become marine soldiers, even if means beating it into you. To start things off we're going to go on a nice 10-mile run, then we'll do other exercises, 100 reps each, and a word of warning, if anyone isn't able to keep up with me, there will be consequences. Anko took off, and the group moved to follow, she set a decent pace, but it was nothing Naruto couldn't handle. A number of the other recruits started having trouble as early as a couple of miles in, some looked practically dead by the time they finally returned to their original starting point, but everyone had stayed with the group, they were quickly put to work doing other exercises, sit-ups, push-ups, crunches. After she was satisfied, they'd done enough, she called them all together. Okay, we're going to do it again, Anko told them, completely shocking everyone, only this time it will be a 20-mile run with 200 reps on each other exercises, after that, we'll do it again, 30-mile run with 300 reps on each other exercises, on and on, until there is nothing left. You're all wondering why I am so overzealous, Anko explained her reasons. The reason I'm so overzealous is because this is for your own good. You think you had what it takes against any pirate you meet out there in the world, but there is more than meets the eyes, and if I don't put the pressure on you sooner or later you'll be dead on your first day as marine soldier. Now move it. The collective groan went up, but Naruto wasn't complaining. As he started running, Kiba pulled up next to him. He was glad to see the other boy didn't seem to be much bothered by the exercise either. I heard about Anko from my sister, he told Naruto quietly, spying the woman warily, as if nervous shed here. She was once a vice admiral from G5 base, a marine base located in the New World, near the Red Line. Why was she demoted to Commodore? Naruto asked him, curious. She got into trouble for beating up a royal princess from the Lulusia kingdom. Kiba gave him the details. She was known as Black Whip Anko because she likes to torture pirates she captures, marine soldiers that don't keep up with her in her command, and civilians that rub her the wrong way. Word spread that she would have been boosted out of the Marines if wasn't for her uncle. So she'd been demoted to Commodore and transferred to Marineford to serve as drill instructor, training Marine recruits. The loud huffing noise let the two boys know someone else was approaching from behind. Back they saw Nezumi, struggling to catch up. My heart feels like it's going to explode. He struggled to get out between his labored breaths. Naruto certainly didn't feel like he was suffering and was going to tell the boy so, but saying that seemed to have taken the last of Nezuma's strength. As he fell to the ground right on the spot and lay there, Naruto and Kiba continued running, noticing Anko glance behind her. Looks like we have our first straggler, she said cheerfully, you guys keep running, I'll be right back. Looking over his shoulder, he saw Anko dash back to the boy and pull a whip from somewhere, one that she immediately proceeded to put to use. Naruto turned his focus back to where he was going, grinning to himself. You can't do this. Nezumi screeched indignantly from behind them, my father will have your head for this. Seem like you don't know your place, Anko sneered, here I make the threats. Here I make the rules. Here, I am the Black Whip. In the next moment, Anko begins whipping Nezumi, causing him to scream out in pain, much to Naruto's delight. "Now keep up with the others," Anko warned Nezumi, "or it'll beat the skin out of your bones." "No wonder Shess the Black Whip," Naruto conceded. Glossary, Devil Fruit. Zmkim no Mi, augment fruit. The Zmkim no Mi is a paramecia-type devil fruit that gives the user the ability to enhance the powers of oneself and or others. The fruit was eaten by Akamaru, making him a augment dog. Races, Inyazuka tribe. Inyazuka tribe hails from Inyazuka Island, located in Paradise, the other half the Grand Line. The natives of the island are easily identified by the distinctive red fang markings on their cheeks and known to have wild dogs or wolves for close companions. While their origins are unknown, it was rumored that the Inyazuka tribe are descended from the mink tribe. Like their canine partners, they have greatly enhanced senses, especially their sense of smell. By concentrating their noses, this sense is amplified to an even greater extent, allowing the user to be able to detect, track and monitor targets from a fairly long distance away, making them superior scouts, trackers, and hunters. The tribe practices a martial art called Fenrir style, a fighting style that allows the user to fight like a wild animal, yet with pure unpredictability and efficiency. During the presence of full moon, members of the Inyazuka tribe undergo a bodily transformation that turns them into werewolf-like beasts, which vastly enhance their strengths and skills. Yet their lifespan rapidly decreases as long as they remain in this form. Inyazuka tribe members are valued as slaves by humans, and the standard price for an Inyazuka tribe member is 700,000 berries. Naruto sat on his bed, looking over a star chart. They'd just finished their training for the day and were falling into their usual routine. Several weeks had already passed since Head joined the Marines, and with just one to go until the exam, Naruto and Kiba had both been hard at work preparing to pass it. It's not as if their basic training would be much help, Head should have realized it from the name. But it was mostly just exercise, even if it had got a bit harder over time. Sure, they mixed in a few things that were actually useful, gun maintenance, steering ships, repairing leaks, and such, but Head learned that most of the interesting stuff was saved until after they'd completed basically. "No stuck in a book again?" Kiba asked. "You should come outside and do some real training with me." "Believe me, I'd love to," Naruto replied, "but I'm already confident in my fighting ability. If I'm going to fail this exam, it'll be the written portion. You could probably use to spend a little more time studying as well." "I don't need to worry about that," Kiba said dismissively. "You do know that as long as you do exceptionally well on one portion of the exam, they'll pass you even if you totally bomb the other half, right?" "Really?" Naruto replied hopefully. Most of this material was horribly dull, and Head loved nothing more than to throw out his books and go spend the last week sparring with Kiba instead, but as tempting as the idea sounded, he quickly dismissed it. "My father always used to tell me there's more to being a good officer than being able to fight," Naruto said firmly. "We might be able to pass the exam, but do you really want to be the type of officer who's only good at fighting? One that your subordinates can't rely on for anything else?" "Man, no need to get all philosophical on me," Kiba said defensively. "I guess I can keep you company for one night." Making good on his words, Kiba grabbed up a book on identifying edible plants that were sitting on the floor. Taking it over to his own bed, he sat down and began to read. It wasn't long before Head began to fidget. "So how about that special training we're doing tomorrow?" Kiba asked. "Finally get to have some real fun, huh?" "They didn't go into a lot of details," Naruto replied, "just that it's some sort of naval combat simulation. You know anything else?" "Yeah, I heard all about it from my sister," he answered, always happy to show off what he knew. "It's more a sort of a final test for the officer candidates. They give them a bunch of fresh recruits who aren't even done with basic training. Then they stick them on a ship and pit them against each other to judge how well they can lead their crew. For us it's mostly just a chance to enjoy ourselves." "So do we get to fire the cannons at each other or what?" Naruto queried, because that sounds a bit dangerous. "They have special paintballs for all the cannons and firearms," Kiba responded. "Sounds fun," Naruto agreed. "I wonder who we'll get teamed up with." 0000. Denton approached the area where she was told to meet her temporary crew, and sure enough, they had already gathered there. She was going to introduce herself, but held off when she saw a blonde boy having a heated discussion with another recruit. "I'll eat those words, Nezumi," the blonde said angrily. "We're going to tear your team apart." "I highly doubt that, Naruto," Nezumi replied smugly. "I noticed something odd about your group. The 10 of you are the 10 who received the lowest scores on the officer. Must really have it in for whoever is leading your group." Denton felt like Shed just been kicked in the gut. Shed had the baddest luck of be assigned to a crew of recruits with lowest scores on the has already failed the test twice, and if she fails the test a third time, she loses her chance in becoming a Marine officer. "Then whoever they are is lucky you didn't take the exam," Naruto fired back. "It really would be hopeless if they had to deal with you." "Please, I could have passed the exam with ease," Nezumi retorted. "Now I really have to be getting back to my own group. I look forward to seeing you squirm after we defeat you." "This is group 7, right?" Tenten asked the remaining recruits, hoping that Shed somehow ended up in the wrong place. That's right, Naruto answered, destroying her last hope. No, she couldn't just give up before she even tried. All of the recruits in front of her had at least hoped to be officers, having chosen to take the exam, so they couldn't be completely incompetent, could they? Tenten, she said, trying to sound more confident than she felt, it'll be in charge for the remainder of this exercise. Now let's all board the ship and get this started. See, that wasn't so bad, all of them were following her, and not even one had talked back. Climbing aboard she found the proctor already standing on the deck. He had them wait a few minutes before telling them to begin. As soon as he did, most of her crew began rushing for the cannons. This leads to a bit of confusion, as there were only 4 cannons on the small ship. We can't all use the cannons, a rather overweight one announced, so it'll take this one, and some of you will have to find something else to do. That's not fair, another complained, why should you get to be the one to fire it? Maybe we can all take turns, a third suggested. Glancing nervously at the proctor, Tenten realized she needed to get control of the situation fast, so she began selecting recruits at random and giving them tasks. You take the helm, you raise the anchor, you two unfurl the sails, and you climb up to the crow's nest and keep an eye out for the other ship. But I'm afraid of heights, the boy Shed selected as lookout complained, I think I should just take a cannon instead. If you really are afraid of heights, now's as good a time as any to get over it, she replied angrily, now get up there, that's an order. Out of the corner of her eye, she saw the 2 recruits Shed ordered to unfurl the sails doing just that and gasped, wait. She yelled to them that hasn't been properly secured yet. But her words reached them too late, as the newly unfurled sail caught the wind. This rather forcefully swung the boom around, knocking both of them. The blonde from earlier had already jumped in and was securing it, because she had another crisis to deal with. Help. Get me down from here. A voice cried out from above. The boy Shed sent to the crow's nest was halfway up, eyes closed, and clinging to the ladder with all his might. At least he hadn't been lying about his fear of heights, she thought bitterly. Just take some deep breaths and climb back down, Tenten said soothingly. I changed my mind, you don't have to go up there. I'm not moving, he insisted stubbornly. Tenten continued to attempt to coax him down until she noticed that, despite all the time Shed wasted doing so, the ship still hadn't moved. Looking over at the anchor, she saw it had yet to be raised. The recruit assigned that task still struggling with it, she hurried over to see what was wrong. I'm sorry, but it won't budge, the recruit declared when he saw her coming. Walking up next to him, Tenten released the locking mechanism which was still in place, and the crank immediately began to turn under the boy's efforts. Sorry about that, he said sheepishly. The ship finally began to pull away from dock, but her relief was short-lived as she heard first one and then a second cannon fire. Tenten rushed over to get a look at the other ship, mad that no one had announced its presence. She saw it off to the port side approaching rapidly, but it was still pretty far off. What did you fire the cannons for? She berated them, they're still way out of range. But they won't be for long, judging by their course, they were trying to get in front of them, a wise decision considering the ship didn't have any front-mounted cannons. Reload, quickly, she ordered, then turned to the helmsman, hard to starboard. She won't let them have their way so easily. Shed turned the ship parallel to their course, and they could exchange shots until one of them sank. She only hoped the port side cannons were reloaded in time, or that's what she would if the ship were actually turning to starboard like Shed ordered. That's port. She yelled at the helmsman, no, don't switch directions now. It's too late for that, keeping turning to port, no. Port is the direction you were going the first time. Just turn left, you do know which way is left right. In the confusion, the other ship had positioned themselves directly in front of them, just as Shed hoped to avoid. It fired a pair of shots, one fell short, but the other slammed into the mainmast, just above the still cowering recruit, painting it a bright shade of yellow. The impact startled the recruit, who lost his hold on the ladder and began to fall backwards. Tenten ran beneath his path and succeeded in catching the boy, but lost her balance in the process. The two of them went sprawling, their spill sending them right into the stairwell and cartwheeling down below deck. Her progress stopped by a wall. Tenten quickly regained her senses and checked on the boy, seeming to have avoided anything but a few bruises herself. Are you injured? She asked him. I think he'll be okay, he replied shakily. Hurrying back upstairs, she was dismayed to see a big splotch of purple paint right in the middle of the deck, indicating a second hit. Your mainmast is destroyed, and your ship is sinking, the proctor announced. What will you do? What could she do? It was too late to do anything, she was going to fail. The other ship was pulling up alongside them and ordering them to surrender. She supposed that was the only option she had. But before she could say anything, the blonde recruit from the earlier spoke up. If our ship is sinking, then we'll just have to take theirs. Not even waiting for her reply, he ran to the edge of the ship and leaped across to the other one. His actions served as a much-needed wake-up call. Firming her resolve, she turned to the crew. All hands to the lifeboats, she ordered. I've got a ship to capture. Following after the reckless recruit, she jumped across to the other defenders had pulled out their guns and were attempting to get rid of single-man boarding. He was weaving between them faster than she would have believed possible from a recruit, and not a single shot hit. Could he be using Soru? It can't be, how did someone who had even partially mastered one of the Rakishiki skills fail the exam? It was when Tenten noticed there were several versions of the blonde devil fruit powers. How? Yet Tenten didn't have time to consider that further. When Shed landed, 10 of their opponents had redirected their guns at her. However, Tenten's quick draw skills allow her to shoot the guns out of their hands. Despite being unarmed, they charged at her, only for her to use her pistols to whip them out of the fight. Before joining the Marines, Tenten learned marksmanship skills from Daddy Masterson, a former Marine ensign turned current bounty hunter. Daddy was among the elites and was considered a rising star at Marine headquarters, has excellent marksmanship abilities. It was rumoring that Daddy Masterson was rivals with Yassip the Chaser, the sniper and an officer of the infamous Red Hair Pirates, a close friend to Tenten's mother and father. When Tenten decided to join the Marines, Daddy helped train her to be a superior sniper. Tenten quickly took out 2 more recruits before finding herself lacking any opponents. The rest were lying unconscious on the ground, save for the Nezumi boy, who Naruto was holding in the air by the collar of his shirt. The boy's face was already swelling from whatever treatment his tormentor had given him. "I give up." Nezumi cried frantically, "Have mercy. Please, someone stops him." "That's enough," the proctor ordered him, implying he set the other boy down, who scurried away to hide behind the proctor. "Does this mean we won?" Naruto asked. "Well, they certainly don't look victorious to me," the Marine replied, surveying the unconscious crew around him. "Great," Naruto replied cheerfully, then turned to address her. "Nice job over there, Tenten. Sorry you had such a lousy crew." "It's not your fault, Naruto," she replied graciously, "and thank you, I owe you a huge favor for today." She meant it too, he may have just saved her career. 00000. The day of the exam had finally come. Naruto had hardly slept the night before and had shown up a full 2 hours early, but now had finished the written portion and let himself breathe normally again. He thought he had done well overall. He didn't know all the answers, but most of them had been easy, and besides, Kiba had assured him you could completely fail the written portion as long as you aced the combat test. So had informed them his specialty was unarmed combat when asked. Then he waited for his turn with the unarmed specialist. Kiba's name came up first, and he wished his friend good luck as he departed. Not long after that, Naruto was called, so he left for his assigned room and walked up to the examiner. For some reason, the man had a bandage across his face and resting on his nose. Had he been injured earlier? Lieutenant Kitetsu, the man told him, "You have a couple of minutes to stretch and warm up before we start." "Thanks," Naruto replied, deciding to do just that, still being a bit stiff from 2 hours of the test taking. "You have some pretty impressive people in your group," Kitetsu told him conversationally as Naruto went through his routine. "There was a boy just a couple spots before you who fought like a wild animal. Almost caught me off guard coming at me so ferociously right from the start." "You mean Kiba?" Naruto asked, "Because if he almost caught you flat-footed, you better make sure you are prepared for me. When he fights without his dog, has not even a challenge." "He fights with his dog?" Kitetsu asked dubiously. "You're pulling my leg, and don't worry about me. I'm pretty sure I can handle a few more recruits today. Just come at me whenever you're ready." Be cold and say Naruto hadn't warned him. Now to see if he could rid him of that cocky attitude. Using his Soru, he circled around Kitetsu kicking the back of his knee. Naruto was satisfied to see his leg buckle, causing him began to fall backwards. Grabbing his arm, Naruto gave him a little help and flipped him over so he was flat on his stomach. He then stood there grinning down in appreciation of his work. "Man, they don't even warn me they're sending over a Rakishiki user," Kitetsu mumbled before lightly hopping back to his feet. "Now, let's try that again, hopefully with a little less of me humiliating myself." Complying, Naruto charged in again, but found his examiner ready for his speed this time. What followed was the best match Naruto had had since had left Leaf Island. He was pleased to see that he was a little faster than his opponent, but found it difficult to capitalize on that fact, as the man was very skilled at dodging or redirecting all his blows. But he did keep the lieutenant on the defensive for the most part, and had been able to deal with a few counterattacks that had come his way. Deciding the match had gone on long enough, Naruto made ready to use his clones. He'd see how well he could defend against 5 attackers at once. "Stop." A voice ordered forcefully before he could summon them. Naruto and Kitetsu both dropped their guard and turned to where Lieutenant Commander Iruka had just called out to them from the doorway. "Oh, but I almost had him, sir," Kitetsu complained. "You're not here to beat him, you're here to test him," Iruka declared, "and you were supposed to finish that 5 minutes ago, so I came to see why you're holding everyone up." "Sorry, sir," he apologized, "I guess I just got a bit carried away." "Well, I can see why," Iruka admitted. "I don't think there is any need for further deliberation. You pass, Naruto." "What about the written portion?" Naruto asked. He realizes he should be pleased, but he was a bit unprepared to be so casually told of his success. "I'll inform you of how you did later," Iruka promised, "but as I'm sure he'll be happy to tell you, Kitetsu may only be a lieutenant, but had one of the strongest lieutenants in the force. We certainly don't expect anyone fresh out of basic training to be able to fight evenly with him." "I wouldn't say it was evenly matched," Kitetsu interjected. "You didn't expect me to go all out on a recruit, did you, sir?" Hey, I didn't even use my secret weapon, Naruto countered, you won't have stood a chance if I had. You two can debate this later, Hiruka told them, we've held up the next examinee long enough, congratulations again, Naruto. Naruto left the room with a huge grin, one that he seemed to have almost perpetually for the rest of the day. It also nearly drove Kiba to murder him, at least until several hours later when it was confirmed that he too had passed. 0000. Jiraiya sat nursing his drink. Garp was sitting beside him in the tavern they were frequenting, rapidly making his way through a mound of food. Watching his fellow vice admiral eating obscene quantities of food was not how had planned to spend this evening. But Garp had invited him, and he rarely took no for an answer. Usually, it didn't even seem to hear you say the word. I wish you stop eating like that, Garp, Jiraiya complained. Don't your parents teach you better manners? That is funny coming from a man who spy on naked women, bathing, Garp shot back while eating. It's called research, Jiraiya defended himself. You know that blonde kid who wanted to join the Marines? Garp asked without even bothering to swallow his current mouthful of food first. Yeah, Jiraiya replied, interest piqued, what about him? He just passed the officer exam, Garp continued, pausing his eating in a rare nod to courtesy, and you know that thing with the ship they do? The thing with the ship they do? Jiraiya parroted, we're in the Marines, you know, you're going to have to be a bit more specific. You know, the test, Garp replied, where they fight each other with paint and stuff. Ah, that, Jiraiya nodded sagely. Well, I hear the kid jumped himself onto the other ship and beat up the crew himself, Garp informed him, that is how to win that with style. I'm really starting to like that boy. That's certainly interesting, Jiraiya conceded, but beating up a dozen or so fresh recruits isn't exactly an awe-inspiring feat. They also say he knows Rakishiki, Garp added, that has skilled in 3 of the 6 powers, and he has the power of the multi-no-mi. Hearing that, Jiraiya was startled before he says the multi-no-mi isn't that the devil fruit power of the Phantom Justice Fox. Phantom Justice Fox was the name given to a mysterious woman who is wanted across the world. There was little information about her, for she wears a fox-like mask that covers her face saved for her blonde hair. The most important thing of her identity was her black-orange gilet, with a symbol of justice on her back. Many Marines officers hated her passionately for wearing that jacket, especially she was notorious for her vigilante activities. That's the one, Garp replied. What are the odds that the kid eaten the former devil fruit power of the most dangerous vigilante in the world, Phantom Justice Fox? Yeah, Jiraiya agreed, if that kid eaten that devil fruit, then Phantom Justice Fox is dead. That's not enough to satisfy most in the Marines and the world government, says Garp, although Phantom Justice Fox may have the 3rd largest bounty in history, 5,760,000, compared to Whitebeards and Gold Rogers. She was more hated by the Marines, the world government and the most important, the Celestial Dragons. They wants to know who she really is and make an example of her. Far worse than what they had for Roger. Garp had a point, everyone, the Marines, the world government, and the Celestial Dragons hated the Phantom Justice Fox more than they hated Whitebeard and Gold Roger. There were many reasons why Phantom Justice Fox was deeply despised and the king of the pirates and the world's strongest man. 1. Phantom Justice Fox liked to wear symbol of justice behind her. This made many within the Marines very crazy and irritated. They tries in vain to strip her of that jacket, believing it's extremely heresy for a criminal to have symbol their organization. However, easier said than done for every time a Marine officer challenged to her fight. Phantom Justice Fox inflicted a brutal humiliation of beating down on him. Phantom Justice Fox's strength is immense and formidable. She can fight 3 Marine admirals at the same time, as if it's a walk in the park. 2nd, Phantom Justice Fox has a habit of doing the Marines' job. Whenever a pirate escaped the Marines, they ended up capture and sends to the Marines as a Christmas present. However, Phantom Justice Fox only go after pirates that were worthy of her wrath, pirates who are ruthless and cruel enough to attack innocent people. Yet for every pirate Phantom Justice Fox caught, it was black eye to the Marines' pride. All Phantom Justice Fox was doing is rubbing her nose down on their humiliation and failure, and right in front of the world, and it increased their ire towards the vigilante every moment. 3rd, pirates were not the only one target by Phantom Justice Fox. Marines who proved to be corrupt and abusive in their authority were often terrorized and brutalized by Phantom Justice Fox's vigilantism. Even corrupted nobles, kings or queens from across the world, were not safe from her, for they get in line in abusing their people. Phantom Justice Fox was coming for them with the vengeance of both heaven and hell. And 4th and last, Phantom Justice Fox's favorite target was the Celestial Dragons. The Celestial Dragons untouchable due to their unparalleled power, authority, and prestige, and anyone who dare lay a hand on them faced the wrath of the Marine Admiral, the world government's greatest military powers. Yet Phantom Justice Fox dared, not once but over hundreds of times. As she gained a fierce reputation of stalking, terrorizing, and brutalizing world nobles, Phantom Justice Fox proved to be extremely skilled at infiltration and stealth. She was notorious for infiltrating Mary Geoise many times, intimidating the world nobles and freeing many of their slaves, these actions made the celestial dragons extremely short-tempered and paranoid. They take it out on the marines who failed to capture the vigilante. It was no wonder the woman was feared and hated than the likes of Gold Roger and Whitebeard. The two men has suspected Phantom Justice Fox was long dead. The last time she made an appearance was during the major incident with the Rock Pirates, where Garp teamed up with Roger to defeat the notorious pirate Rox D. Zebek and his crew. Afterwards she was never heard or seen again. Jiraiya raised an eyebrow at subject of the kid that Garp and he were talking about. You know, that kid reminds me of someone, he told Garp, but I can't figure out who. Not that Head really bothered to think about it since Head last seen the boy. Honestly, Head been more interested in why Garp was being so evasive about his grandson. He hadn't even been able to get more out of him than his name, and considering how bad Garp was at keeping a secret, there had to be something to it. That's probably because Hess Minato's boy, Garp explained. Minato had a kid, Jiraiya shouted, drawing disapproving glances from those around him. Does everyone I know secretly have children? Jiraiya asked more calmly. I've decided I'm going to train him, Garp declared, ignoring his questions, and not that pointless stuff they'll do at the academy, real training. Well, I agree, giving him some extra training is a good idea, maybe I should do it. Your training tends to be a bit excessive, and I did know his father better than you. You can't have him, Garp replied stubbornly, I saw him first. Actually, I saw him first, Jiraiya corrected. Really? I guess I forgot, Garp answered before bursting out into laughter and taking another bite of food. But you still can't have him, Garp insisted, once again not seeming to care his mouth was otherwise occupied with chewing. Jiraiya decided to cave. When Garp got like this, there was no point arguing with him. He just hoped Minato's son survived his attention. Minato's son, the notion still seemed so strange. Even if he was younger than he looked, he would have been at least a few years old when Minato died. So why hadn't he ever mentioned him? Had never even heard Minato mention a girl he had his eyes on, maybe he didn't know he was a father. A plausible explanation, even if it seemed to go against Minato's character, but his gut told him there was more to it than that. Jiraiya didn't like secrets, and between this one and Garp's grandson, he now had two of them to gnaw away at him, he'd have to do something about that. Carrying his box of possessions, Naruto left the barracks that had been his home for last month. He'd spend the next 11 at the Marine Officer Academy, and whether out of kindness or coincidence, he'd still be rooming with Kiba at his new location. Not that he'd mind meeting new people, but he'd become fast friends with the other boy, had even gotten used to having Akamaru around, despite the rather cramped state that came from having such a large dog in an already small room. Turning a corner, he found himself face to face none other than Garp. Quickly he set down his box and saluted the man, expecting him to continue his way. Instead he just stood there examining Naruto. I heard you master 3 techniques of Rakushiki. Garp asked him out of nowhere. I did, says Naruto. I know the theory behind all of them. I'm starting training with Rankyaku. Then I suggest you learn Tekai quickly, the large vice admiral told him. Is there any reason? Naruto asked curiously. I was actually working on Shigen next. Trust me, Naruto, Tekai is something you should learn, Garp insisted, then walked off without an explanation. What had that been about? Naruto didn't have a clue. Still, he could boast to Kiba later that Garp himself was giving him advice on training. That gave him pleasant thoughts as he picked up his box and continued to navigate towards the academy. He was crossing a training field near his destination when he saw a flash of something out of the corner of his eye. Almost as soon as Head noticed, there was a loud impact directly in front of him, and Naruto found himself pelted with chunks of earth that had been thrown up by it. Quickly overcoming his surprise, he looked in the small crater to see what had caused it and was intrigued to see a cannonball. He hadn't walked into an artillery practice zone, had he? Looking toward the direction it had come from, he didn't see any cannons, just a single man standing on a nearby hill, make that a very familiar old man who was waving at him. Tekai, Naruto, Tekai. Garp yelled loud enough for Naruto to hear clearly even from a distance. That would have to be a pretty powerful Tekai to withstand a blow like that, judging by the crater. It had a lot more force behind it than a cannon would impart, and Garp had thrown it. Just how strong was he? It was then Naruto noticed the man lifting another cannonball from a small stack beside his feet. He hurled it, and Naruto instinctively leaped to the side, seeing the metal sphere pass right through where Head just been standing. That could have killed him. What kind of homicidal maniac was this man? But seeing him reaching once again for his pile of death, Naruto dropped his box and dashed full speed toward the entrance to the academy's dorms. He had to dodge 3 more assaults, but slid through the door safely, panting and sweating more from the adrenaline than the actual exertion. Naruto? A voice asked from beside him, is something going on out there? He realized he wasn't alone in the hallway Head just entered. It was that girl from that naval exercise was next to him, Tenten, he believed her name was, but how to answer her question? He wasn't about to go around raving to everyone that a legendary hero had gone crazy and was trying to kill him. he'd be the one locked up in an asylum somewhere. Just getting some exercise," he lied, trying to sound as natural as possible. "I passed the officer exam, so I'm moving in here today." "That's great to hear," she told him. "I'm really more surprised you failed the first time." That's a long story," Naruto replied sheepishly. "Well, I wish we could talk more, but I'm just leaving," Tenten says to him. "I already graduated, just received my first assignment." Good luck with that," he replied to a bit enviously. "I wish I were going with you." I'm already late," she declared, and then brushed past him to hurry out the door. Naruto watched her go, worrying briefly that she was about to be crushed by a cannonball. But she continued without that, meaning Garp was gone. He did still need to go back and get his box of possessions. Deciding to play it safe, he summoned a clone which he sent outside to look for any sign of Garp. It was only a few feet from the entrance when a cannonball flew into its head from directly above, destroying the clone and smashing into the path beneath it. "That's a nice trick, Naruto," a voice called out from the roof. "Yeah, he'd go back for the box later." Turning from the door, he continued until he located his new room. It was a bit larger than his previous one and included a pair of desks to go with. The better he get to work on practicing his Tekai, his chances to survive will increase if he wants to see graduation. He hadn't attempted Tekai in a while, but in the concept, it was pretty simple. You had to tense your muscles in just the right fashion and will them into becoming as hard as iron. In practice, even the slightest wavering in your will could cause the technique to fail and crack your defense. Summoning a clone, he prepared his body and nodded for the clone to start. He watched a blow heading for his stomach, trying to focus his will even harder on its intended destination. He felt the impact of the fist, then doubled over as the blow to his gut knocked the wind out of him. Naruto saw his clone looking down at him sheepishly as he was recovering from the assault. Not being deterred, he stood back up and resumed his previous stance. "Again," he ordered firmly. And that was what Kiba found him still doing when his friend walked in the door a few minutes later. He was already sporting bruises all over his body, having tried a number of different targets, not only to see if he had better luck there, but also to avoid assaulting already abused body parts. "What exactly are you doing?" Kiba asked dumbfoundedly. Akamaru had followed the boy inside and seemed to quickly decide he did not approve of the situation. The only problem was that he couldn't seem to figure out which Naruto he should be upset with. He quickly settled on pushing his way between the two of them and sitting there, giving both Narutos a look that made it clear he won't let them try anything. "It's just that Vice Admiral Garp was trying to kill me," Naruto started explaining, letting his clone vanish, which seemed to calm Akamaru down. "Really?" Kiba quipped. "What did you do to piss him off?" "Nothing," Naruto told him. "Garp wanted to be trained in Tekai, and those cannonballs are his idea of for Tekai training." "Are you serious?" Kiba asked dubiously. "I'm afraid so," Naruto confirmed, "but I'm not exactly having much luck here. I may not even have the physical conditioning for the technique yet." "Well, it doesn't sound like the sort of technique you can learn overnight," Kiba consoled him. "But my life may depend on me doing just that," he replied bitterly. 0000. And so his life at the Marine Officer Academy began. Naruto had to send clones to all his classes to avoid death by Garp. The Vice Admiral certainly hadn't given up on his training. Thankfully, he remembered everything his clones experienced, as many of the lessons were quite interesting. He particularly enjoyed studying military tactics. They also were getting more real combat training. Sure, the unarmed training was too basic to be of any use, but they also trained in the basics of guns, swords and artillery. Meanwhile, the real Naruto hadn't left the dorm since had entered on the first day. Had spent some of the pay had received when he completed basic to buy himself weights to train with, but even as his strength grew, he was frustrated by the slow progress had been making over the months. Had activated Tekai on numerous occasions now, but he still couldn't reliably use it, and even at his best, it won't be strong enough to stop one of Garp's cannonballs. And on top of everything else, he was sick of being interrupted from his training by the memories of his head being smashed in by a high-velocity iron projectile whenever Garp took out one of his clones. The only good thing to come out of this is that he did get some real experience patching holes on a ship, as Garp didn't let the risk of damage to a marine vessel deter his efforts, and they trained on ships fairly regularly. At least he got breaks on occasion. Garp wasn't always in Marineford. Sometimes his clones would go weeks without being bothered, and over time his skill at Tekai became both stronger and more reliable. He still remained hesitant to put it to the test. Even a small mental slip could cause the skill to drop, and there was nothing like having a cannonball hurtling at you to make you lose your focus. But it was during the 10th month of his Schedule 11 at the academy that a particularly long absence from Garp finally convinced Naruto to risk going outside and getting his real body some much-needed sun. He was lined up next to the other officer trainees waiting for the instructor to arrive. The rest of them had all long since learned to give him a wide berth, creating a very noticeable break in the line on either side of Naruto, a fact that was was picked up by Lieutenant Commander Iruka, who happened to be walking by them that day. He didn't usually hang around the academy, dealing more with the enlisted recruits, but whatever caused him to be walking past that day, their odd formation drew his attention. After pausing to examine it curiously, he approached them. "Didn't anyone ever teach you how to form a line?" he asked derisively. "Straighten this mess up immediately." There were some nervous fidgets, but no one complied with his order, a fact that didn't look to sit well with the young officer. Moving over to the trainee to Naruto's right, he got directly in the young man's face. "I gave you an order," he said harshly, then without waiting for a reply turned to his left and began walking back toward Naruto. But Naruto wasn't paying much attention to Iruka any longer, as Head spotted something else that sent a chill down his spine. Off to the left, standing on top of a nearby building, stood Garp, having chosen the worst possible time to return. He was already preparing a throw, and Naruto made ready to dodge, but before he could, he realized Iruka was once again next to him and would be directly in the cannonball's path should Naruto move out of the way. Not having any choice, he instead took a wide stance and prepared to put his training to the test. In a flash, the large metal object slammed into his chest, sending Naruto's whole body backward with the force. He crashed into Iruka with enough momentum left to knock the both of them into the ground. Naruto took only a moment to regain his bearings. Upon doing so, he realized he now held the iron sphere in his hands, and none of his bones seemed to be broken. He was in more than a little pain, but it didn't appear to be anything serious. Climbing to his feet, Iruka did the same a moment later, looking completely shocked. "What was that?" he all but yelled. "Is that a cannonball in your hands?" "Nice catch, Naruto," Garp shouted from his position on the roof. "This explains why everyone was keeping their distance," Iruka muttered, having more or less deduced what was going on. "Isn't something being done to stop this?" "Well, it's been going on since I started and I haven't been hurt yet," Naruto boasted, proud of his accomplishment and not wanting to admit that this was the first time had actually taken a hit. "Still, I'll be filing a report on this incident immediately," Iruka promised. So saying, he began to walk off, keeping a wary eye on Garp as he did. The vice admiral just waved cheerfully to him as he left. 00000. With his newfound confidence from that incident, Naruto began venturing outside himself regularly, but if Iruka did file a report, it hadn't done any good. Naruto faced 3 more of Garp's assaults over the next month, and Naruto was proud to say his Tekai had protected him on each occasion. So with his training nearly complete, he found himself once again preparing for the naval combat simulation that Head first done at the end of basic training, only this time, Head be the one in charge of the crew. He was especially looking forward to the exercise, as Head been paired against Kiba. Sure, they were still good friends, better than ever in fact, but that didn't mean he wouldn't enjoy proving his own superiority. And he got off to a good start. His crew was far more competent than the one Head served with when he last did this. The anchor was raised, and the ship took off smoothly. At Naruto's direction, the helmsman turned the ship to port, the direction he knew the other ship would be waiting. That was when he saw him. Garp was standing back on shore looking at him intently, but he wasn't very concerned with Garp's attacks anymore. Head just deal with this and move on. But a moment after Garp threw the cannonball, Naruto realized it wasn't heading for him, whether through bad aim or deliberate action. Naruto quickly calculated its trajectory would cause it to land a half-dozen feet to his right, putting a hole in the ship in the process. No, he wasn't going to let the man ruin this for him. Not sparing a moment to second-guess himself, he ran directly into its path. Naruto only had a brief instant to prepare himself, but got his Tekai up just in time to protect him, as the momentum of the iron object sent him sliding across the deck. He let himself breathe a sigh of relief at his success when he felt the railing hit the back of his legs, bringing a jolting halt to their progress. Unfortunately, the upper half of his body continued merrily on its way, spilling him over the edge and sending him plummeting into the water. Naruto could now confirm firsthand that those who had eaten a devil fruit couldn't swim. What was worse, it felt like the ocean was draining the very strength from his body. But very shortly after his own descent, he saw another body dive into the water, one he recognized as the proctor. The man pulled him up, lifting his head above the water and allowing Naruto to gasp for air. One of the recruits had already thrown a rope into the water which the proctor grabbed and used to climb back to the ship, carrying Naruto with him. "Just hold on," the proctor said worriedly after gently laying him on the deck. "We're going to get you to a doctor." "No, I'm fine," Naruto told him, strength already returning to him now that he was out of the seawater. "Don't lie to me," the man berated him. "You were just hit by a cannonball. For goodness sake, you were all but dead in the water when I got to you." "Really, I'm fine," he insisted, climbing easily to his feet to prove it. "I couldn't swim because I'm a devil fruit user." "Captain, the other ship is dead ahead," a recruit called out from the crow's nest, interrupting further debate. Garp may be a jerk, but he had given Naruto an idea. Keep our course heading straight for the other ship, Naruto ordered the helmsman. Then summoning 9 clones, he helped them all gather up the paint cannonballs into a big pile on the prow of the ship. The crew looked on with suitably odd actions also served to convince the proctor that he really was going to be okay. Lifting one of the mock cannonballs experimentally, he tossed it off to the side to gauge his distance, finding himself pleased with the result. He was no match for Garp, but these paintballs were much lighter than a real cannonball, and thanks to his months of strength training, it seemed his range was a fair bit longer than a cannon's range. So he waited until Kiba's ship had just passed within that range, and then opened fire, with Naruto and 9 clones rowing as fast as they could. It looked almost as if a storm of giant rainbow hailstones was falling on the other ship. When he stopped, it was clear to the naked eye the ship had received a number of direct hits. I guess that means we win, he announced jovially to his crew. 00000. Did you really have to show off so much, Naruto? Kiba complained from beside him. What exactly could I do to respond to that? You still haven't let that go? Naruto asked. If anything you should be glad I did that, like you said, what could you have done? There's really nothing they could fault you for. It would have looked a lot worse for you if it'd won with conventional tactics. And what makes you so sure you would have won? His friend replied petulantly. Look, we both graduated, so let's just leave it at that and enjoy the moment, Naruto told him diplomatically. To his great pleasure, Kiba took his advice, and they soon filed into the auditorium where their graduation ceremony was about to take place. Finding their seats they waited as the rest of the graduates made their way in, along with a number of family members taking up seats in the back. Soon the ceremony began, and Naruto was thrilled to see Fleet Admiral Sengoku himself giving the speech. You are all here today because you chose to begin a noble career path, Sengoku orated, and now, thanks to your year of hard work. His words trailed off at the end as he noted Vice Admiral Garp making his way onto the stage carrying a large box. Garp, what are you doing here? Sengoku demanded of him. I'm going to let you finish, Garp replied, but Naruto doesn't graduate unless I say so. That's not your decision to make, Sengoku replied angrily, now get off the stage this instant. But Garp ignored the order and set the box down, opening it to reveal that it was full of cannonballs. Consider this your real final exam, Garp called out to him, and you better not dodge any of these. Naruto was unsurprised to see all the other graduates had already vacated the area, even Kiba, who had been sitting right next to him was nowhere in sight. This wasn't going to be simple. Had never tried to take more than one of these at a time, and the range between them was much less than ever before as well, but his pride won't let him back down now. Naruto crossed his arms in front of him and braced for the impact. The first one hit his right forearm, and Naruto could swear he felt his arm about to snap just before the pressure subsided, and the ball fell to the ground. The seat behind him was helping prevent his body from sliding backward from the impact, not that head of minded a little extra distance. Almost as soon as the first attack had finished, the second struck him dead center on his forehead. Naruto wondered briefly how he'd been able to protect himself when there wasn't exactly a lot of muscle up there, but he ignored the thought and the new ringing in his ears, and a good thing he had as he regained control of his tech eye just in time for the third cannonball, which landed directly in his gut. It forced him to exhale his breath, but had prevented it from doing more than that. The next projectile came so quickly gravity had yet to begin to assert itself over the previous ball. It struck him in his lower right leg, but he stood firmly, refusing to lose his balance because the next one. Actually, there wasn't a next one. Sengoku had wrestled Garp to the ground and was holding him there with his arms pinned behind him. Congratulations to all of you, Sengoku declared, clearly still focused more on his struggle with Garp. You are now officially commissioned ensigns in the Marine Force, dismissed. Meanwhile, Garp was filling the auditorium with his raucous laughter, had also managed to free one his arms which held out in a thumb-up sign. You pass, Naruto, he announced loudly, now go out there and teach those pirates to fear the Marines. So where do you want to get assigned? Kiba asked. After the graduation mess had been sorted out, they'd been directed to a building where assignments were being given to the new officers. Naruto and Kiba were currently on their way there, and seeing how much of an impact this would have on their lives, they understandably had little else on their minds. Hopefully somewhere on the Grand Line, Naruto replied, and out hunting pirates, not stuck in a base. Same goes for me, Kiba answered. I only hope they don't transfer me to my mom's command. I forgot that your mom and your sister were in the Marines, says Naruto. Yeah, Kiba reply. They're ranked as elite Marine officers and are under the command of Vice Admiral Tsuru, the great staff officer. Humming to the building they'd been directed to, Naruto entered and quickly moved to the rear of a small line that had already formed, Kiba falling in place behind him. It was only a short wait until he stood in front of the desk that belonged to a silver-haired young officer, Lieutenant Commander Mizuki, according to a nameplate on the desk. Name please, he ordered in tone that clearly showed he would rather be anywhere but here. Ensign Naruto Namikaze, he supplied. Namikaze, huh? Mizuki responded, raising an eyebrow. I take it you've heard of my dad, Admiral Minato, Naruto said proudly. You mean Commodore Minato Namikaze, Mizuki corrected disdainfully. They may have tried to spare his son the news, but he was demoted posthumously for failing to follow important orders of an important mission. That's still an admiral as far as I'm concerned, Naruto snapped back at the man. He didn't deserve to be demoted for giving his life to save his village. Disobeying a direct order and dereliction of duty is serious offenses, Mizuki said coldly. You ever heard of red-haired Shanks? He was once a member of the legendary pirate crew of Gold Roger, the king of the pirates. After Roger's death, Shanks risen as an infamous and powerful pirate, and we long suspect he will one day be a great danger to society. Wed received intelligence that Shanks was in East Blue and had been seriously wounded. Your father was supposed to be part of a task force sent to capture the man. Mizuki paused and stared at the fuming Naruto, as if to make sure his words were sinking in. But because he refused that order, Mizuki continued, Shanks were able to escape and later became a Yonko, one of the four emperors of the seas. Because of your father's inability to do his duty, he allows an extremely dangerous pirate to seat himself as a powerful position to terrorize the world. Naruto had a retort ready, but Kiba came to his defense and spoke first. You can't blame a man for caring about his own home and family, or for choosing them over some pirate who seems content to stay in the new world fighting other pirates over One Piece. And how many law-abiding innocent citizens can't sleep each because he's still out there? Mizuki asked, how many have become inspired to take up a life of piracy because he seems to be able to get away with it? Mizuki appeared to realize they were causing a scene and holding up a line that was still growing behind the two young officers he was arguing with, rifling through his papers. He pulled one out. I believe I have just the assignment for two officers who show questionable judgment, he said with a self-satisfied smirk. There's Captain Morgan looking for some fresh blood. I've heard Hess quite strict with his subordinates, so he should give you many opportunities to cause trouble. And what trouble could you really cause in East Blue? Quickly writing down their assignments in his records, he held out 2 sheets of paper. Your ship leaves tonight, all the details are right here, he informed them, unless you feel your father isn't the only one who's too good to follow orders. Naruto snatched the papers from his hand, spun around and stormed back outside, Kiba following right behind him. Not his first choice of what to do with the papers Mizuki had been holding out, but that poor excuse for a marine was probably itching for him to try something he could charge them over. He was not going to give him the pleasure. 00000, Shell's Town, East Blue Sea. Naruto leaned over the rail of the ship, staring forlornly as Shell Island came into view. He let out another sigh at being stuck with this assignment. Stop moping already, Kiba told him. This might not be all bad, and at least you've got a friendly face with you. Have you ever considered I might be sick of seeing your face? Naruto muttered sullenly. Hey now, Kiba snapped back, I'm just trying to cheer you up, no need to bite my head off. I know, Naruto said half apologetically, it's just we're stuck here in East Blue, the weakest of the seas. Do you know where East Blue pirate captains come from? Naruto questioned before he answered. No, where? They're deckhands or cabin boys from pirate crews on other seas that were too weak for even that job, Naruto continued, so they come to East Blue and gather up a bunch of buffoons, impressed just by the fact that they've been on a real pirate ship, then they all go off and cause more mischief than actual harm. Now you're exaggerating, Kiba admonished, even East Blue has to have some decent pirates. My sister bet that the next king of pirates will be born here. I doubt it, Naruto replied, but despite Naruto's words, Kiba had somehow succeeded in cheering him a bit, maybe he just needed to vent. You were right about the friendly face though, Naruto added, it is nice to have Akamaru along, right boy? Akamaru gave a quick bark as if in assent, and Naruto rewarded him by scratching behind the large dog's ears. Kiba for his part, chose to ignore the veiled insult directed at him. Well, they'd soon learn in more detail if there were any redeeming qualities to this assignment. As they were pulling into the dock right at that moment, after they'd departed the ship, they were directed toward a dark-skinned marine who was busy yelling at a number of other marines around him. They approached him and stood waiting for him to take notice, not wanting to interrupt his tirade. I thought I told you to get rid of that pirate ship we impounded, he shouted, so why is it still sitting here taking up space in the dock? Sorry sir, the target of his ire replied, I'm just not sure what to do with it. I don't know, the first man said, find someone to buy it, take it out to sea and set it on fire. I don't really care, just someone get rid of it. The man saluted and walked off without debating the matter further. Can I help you? He asked impatiently, turning to where they'd been waiting. We've been ordered to report to Captain Morgan, Naruto replied. Oh, the new recruits, he replied, I'd forgotten you were coming, but unless you feel like paying him a visit in his prison cell, you'll have to forget about your orders. I'm Commander Ripper, the one in charge of dealing with the mess he left me. What does that mean? Naruto wondered. He sat looking at them for a moment, as if trying to figure out what to do with them. I'm really busy right now, so why don't you go have a look around town, he suggested. If you find me in a couple of hours or so, hopefully I'll have a few minutes to set you up with some quarters. The commander had already turned to another marine, so Naruto just saluted and walked off, Kiba mirroring him and Akamaru bringing up the rear. I wonder what's that all about, says Naruto. Maybe someone around knows, said Kiba, looking around until he sees someone. Hey you, kid. Kiba was calling out to a young marine who was mopping the floor. This marine looks like a small timid chubby boy with pink hair and round frame glasses. Hearing Kiba called out to him, the young marine with glasses headed towards him and asked, are you talking to me, sir? Yeah, said Kiba, we like to know where Captain Morgan is. Captain Morgan? The boy repeated, Hess in a jail cell. Jail cell? Naruto repeated, looking confused, for what? Well, the young marine begins to explain, Captain Morgan was imprisoned for abusing his rank and authority. Naruto and Kiba look shocked. Are you serious? Naruto asked, wanted to be sure he heard right. I'm serious, the boy replied. Morgan used his rank and authority to become an outright tyrant, extracting high taxes from the townsfolk, who grew to fear the mere mention of his name, and building monuments to himself. None dared challenge his rule, as he had no qualms about killing his own men for defying his orders that considered to be unquestionable. It was the reason he was locked up. How did he get locked up? Kiba asked. I heard Morgan took down the infamous Captain Kuro of 100 Plans. I really don't know, the boy replied looking nervous and hesitated. Listen, I got to get work on these floors right now, because I'm scheduled for more chores in the next hour. Once the young marine left, Kiba asked, so, anywhere in particular you want to go? With Morgan in jail there is nothing else to do. Actually, there is, Naruto replied. I want to go take a closer look at that pirate ship he was talking about. That's fine with me, Kiba answered, but why do you want to do that? Because I plan to take it, Naruto declared, unable to completely hide a devious smirk he was developing. You plan to what? Kiba asked incredulously, looking around to make sure no one else was in range to overhear. You heard me, Naruto replied. I plan to sail off with the ship and go pirate hunting. You're welcome to come with me, if you'd like. Do you know how much trouble that could get us in? Kiba queried. Commander Ripper did order someone to get rid of it, Naruto pointed out, so as I see it, we're just following orders. You don't actually think they'll buy that, do you? His friend argued. Look, Naruto told him firmly, I know this is crazy and impulsive, and I'll probably regret it in the morning, but I just have the feeling that this is my chance, and that if I don't take it, I'm going to be stuck here doing menial tasks instead of out there doing something worthwhile. Now I don't know about you, but I joined the Marines to make a difference. Kiba stood there deliberating for almost half a minute before he finally broke into a smile. Oh, why not? He finally said, at our court-martial I'll just tell them it was all your idea. What do you say, Akamaru, are you in? In reply, the oversized canine began trotting over to the edge of the docks that held their target. The three of them hid themselves around the corner of a warehouse, hoping that the dock would clear itself of people if they waited long enough. While they were waiting, they got a good look at the ship. It was a decent-sized ship which looked able to easily support a crew of a dozen or so. The ship itself was very plain in design, but seemed to be solid construction. Maybe a stolen merchant ship, or given that this was East Blue, more likely just a bunch of merchants that decided to repaint their ship and call themselves pirates. It was a dark green in color with black sails, and there was a flag tied to the mainmast, with the ubiquitous skull and crossbones of a pirate ship. The skull had a green frog about half its own size of sitting on top of it. Yeah, that would really strike fear into the hearts of those who witnessed it. That's a pretty big ship for just the three of us, Kiba pointed out. It's going to be difficult to handle. You're forgetting who you're dealing with, Naruto reminded him. Oh yeah, Kiba responded, that's a really useful power you have. The commander had already departed, and soon the ship that brought them left as well, leaving the dock deserted. Making use of the opportunity, they hurried to the ship and climbed aboard. Naruto immediately summoned 4 clones and sent them to work preparing the ship to set sail. The real Naruto took the helm, but it didn't take long until the ship began to move away from the port, but it wasn't until the island had faded out of sight that Naruto allowed himself to breathe a sigh of relief. Even I didn't expect to be captain of my own ship this soon, he admitted. Hey, why do you get to be the captain? Kiba asked. This was my idea, Naruto pointed out, and if that's not enough for you, I have a devil fruit power. The captain is always the one with the cool power, but you can be my first mate if makes you feel better. What does devil fruit powers have to do with anything? He argued, even Akamaru has a devil fruit power. Good point, Naruto admitted, you can be my first mate, Akamaru. Akamaru barked cheerfully and ran over to stand next to Naruto. You traitor. Kiba snarled accusingly, but Akamaru didn't seem fazed at all. Looks like you're outvoted, Naruto told him. Fine, Kiba conceded, but you two better find someone else to pull you out of the water if you ever fall in. Naruto could feel the thrill of adventure waiting for him, and despite their banter, he could tell even Kiba was getting into the spirit of things. He turned the ship west, toward the setting sun, and, eventually, the Grand Line. Any pirates out there better hope they didn't have the misfortune of crossing his path. 0000. Former pirate ship, East Blue Sea. Pirates dead ahead, one of Naruto's clones called out from the crow's nest. That hadn't taken long. It was less than a day from when they'd set sail. Taking up a spare telescope, Naruto looked through to examine the pirates himself. He could just make out the skull and crossbones painted on their sails. And oddly enough, that's all there was to the design. Just a standard skull and crossbones. Usually, each pirate crew added their own touch to make the design unique, but there didn't seem to be any such variation on this flag. He didn't recognize any pirates who used that design either, and had made sure to do research on all East Blue bounties before he shipped out here, and if they didn't have a bounty, that meant this fight was unlikely to be even mildly interesting. Still, it'd be one less pirate crew on the loose. Naruto set course for the enemy ship, which obligingly was moving toward them as well. The ship only had 2 cannons, one mounted on either side. He had a clone stationed at each in case they ended up exchanging shots, but the other ship was content to simply continue their approach, so Naruto held off on the shooting as well. As the ships pulled up next to each other, Kiba and Naruto stood at the starboard railing getting a lock at the other crew. There were about 20 or so men armed with pistols and cutlasses. They were led by a captain who looked like a walking stereotype. He stood about average height and builds, with a long scraggly black beard, a wooden leg, a hook for one of his hands, and an eye patch covering an eye. He even had a parrot sitting on his shoulder. Let me handle this, Naruto told Kiba. This fight will be dull enough even without help. Only if you let me and Akamaru have the next ship, Kiba answered. Fair enough, he agreed. Surrender your ship if you wish to live, the pirate captain ordered. You're the one that should surrender, Naruto yelled back. It'll be less painful for you. Do you hear that, lads? The leader of the pirates asked. He wants us to surrender. Why, I have more reason to fear me own mother than I do these bilge rats. His crew laughed appreciatively at his barb, some of them throwing in jeers of their own. Naruto just cracked his knuckles in reply and jumped across to the other ship. 0000. Still think your mother is scarier than we are? Naruto asked smugly. The captain held the honor of being the only pirate left conscious, the rest of them being sprawled all over their ship's deck where Naruto had left them, and the honor was somewhat dubious in nature, given he was currently bound in rope after having received a thorough trouncing, and the way his one good eye was starting to swell up, he was at real risk of being temporarily blinded. Ye beat me soundly, the one-legged captain answered. I be man enough to admit it, but these wounds are nothing compared to me last encounter with me mother, a terrifying woman she be. What are we going to do with them? Kiba asked. Having joined Naruto on the other ship, I don't feel like sharing our ship with 20 captive pirates, and how are we supposed to turn them in when we're trying to avoid other marines? I've already thought about that, Naruto answered. We can leave the crew on their ship and have 3 of my clones sail it into a marine base. Once I've handed them over, the clones can just disperse themselves. Can they travel that far from you? Kiba asked curiously. I've never tested it quite so far, Naruto admitted, but they've worked fine at a pretty decent range, so I have no reason to think it won't work, but we can keep the captain on our ship for now, just to be safe. Sounds good, Kiba agreed, but before we send them off, let's help ourselves to some of their food and water. There wasn't exactly a large supply on the ship when we left. Good idea, he replied. If we run into pirates often enough, we won't even need to risk stopping at a port to resupply. I just hope some of them put up a little more of a fight than this. 0000. Do you think they're pirates? Naruto asked, handing Kiba his telescope. Kiba peered through it at the vessel that was approaching them, a rather elegantly designed ship that looked to be quite expensive. Well, they don't look too friendly, Kiba answered. It's pretty clear they intend to fight us, but I've never heard of pirates being so well dressed, and there's nothing about the ship that would suggest they're up to no good. Maybe they think we're pirates, Naruto suggested. We may have taken down that stupid frog flag, but black sails are certainly suspicious. Still confused as to what would be the appropriate course of action, they waited until the ships were close enough to communicate. I know the black sails are odd, but we're not pirates, we're marines, Naruto yelled out to them. See, we're even wearing our uniforms. That's too bad for you, because we are pirates, a voice replied. While most of the crew could simply be considered well dressed, the owner of the voice's outfit was nothing less than flamboyant. He would wager the white shirt and dark pants of his were made of silk. Silk wasn't cheap as it was, and beyond that his shirt was embroidered with a pattern of thorns that wrapped around his arms. You are in the presence of the most stylish pirates in East Blue, the man Naruto could only assume to be the captain boasted. Cower in fear or gaze in awe as you hand over your valuables, whichever you prefer. Come on Akamaru, Kiba called to his canine companion. I believe it's our turn. 0000. Naruto led the newly captured pirate captain below deck, where their first captive was still tied up. There were 6 rooms down here that were designed as sleeping quarters, 5 of them made for 2 crewmen and a larger room for the captain. Considering how often they were likely to have captives, Naruto would have to see about converting one of them to a cell at some point, but for now he was just leaving them tied up in the central area under guard from Akamaru, and whenever Akamaru needed a break, his clone would stand in for him. But he already had 3 clones taking care of their most recently captured ship along with its crew, so using his last one to guard prisoners left just Kiba to help him sail the ship. But as he brought his new captive below, the man immediately noticed his fellow prisoner, and Naruto saw a recognition flash in his eyes. I should have known you'd already be captured, Harold, he declared as Naruto began to secure his bonds. You always were a lousy pirate. I told ye 1,000 times, Julian Harold responded in annoyance. Don't you call me by that name any longer. I be Captain Scourge now, and it'll have ye know that there were a dozen men on this ship when we clashed. I killed 8 of them myself including their captain, and here, ye be having lost to their 2 young cabin boys. That's a lie, like everything else about you, Julian retorted. Naruto realized he should probably get back above deck, but he was enjoying the argument too much for the moment, and decided he could spare a few minutes. It may be I exaggerate a bit, Harold admitted. Any pirate worth his salt enjoys weaving a good tale, but what about me could be called a lie? Where do I start? Julian asked melodramatically. Your eye works just fine under that patch. You're holding that hook in a perfectly good hand you're hiding in your sleeve, and that parrot you usually keep on your shoulder is stuffed. Aye, that may be true, Harold granted, but me peg leg be real, and the rest be real enough in spirit. Whatever you say fake beard, Julian mocked. Hey now, Harold replied, sounding truly hurt by the remark. It doesn't be right to make fun of a man's condition. What doesn't let him grow a proper pirate-like beard? At least I be trying to look the part of a pirate. A pointless endeavor that is, Julian declared. You're just blindly sticking to stupid traditions. You need to realize that being a pirate doesn't preclude one from being elegant. Here's what I think of ye and your elegance, Harold shouted. Then proving Julian's earlier claim, he wriggled beneath his bindings and managed to toss his hook at where Julian sat a short distance away. His aim was true, and the point of his hook snagged the other man's shirt along the side of his chest, tearing a hole in it. My designer shirt. Julian cried out in horror. Do you have any idea how much this cost? And look at this, I'm bleeding. If I scar, it'll ruin my perfect chest. He'll never be able to visit a beach again. Finally deciding he'd had enough, Naruto went back above deck, leaving Akamaru to look on in amusement as the 2 captains slid along the floor and began attacking one another as best they could while tied up. Honestly, were those 2 idiots even a risk to anyone? Making up his mind right then, he went back above deck and approached Kiba. It was when he saw Kiba looking through a telescope at some ships that were nearing. What do you make of this? Kiba asked. 4 ships whose crews all look terrified of something behind them, but I don't see anyone chasing them. I don't know, Naruto admitted. Let's go ask one of them. They were able to pull their ship up next to one of the others, matching its speed and course. Naruto would have preferred a real marine ship, but it was some consolation that the one they'd ended up with was, in all honesty, a reasonably fast ship. Is there any trouble? Naruto asked. It's Don Krieg, a passenger on the ship yelled back, Hess attacking the Bereti. We just escaped from there. Don Krieg huh? Naruto muttered. Recognize the name? Kiba asked. Yeah, he has the 2nd highest bounty in East Blue, he replied. He must have at least a little fight in him to earn that. Setting course in the direction the ships had just fled from, it didn't take them long to see the floating restaurant coming up in the distance, but when he got close enough to make out details, Naruto almost did a double take. Krieg's ship is in pieces, Naruto declared in surprise. How did that happen? Kiba asked. Not having any reply, Naruto simply continued to scan through the telescope for any clues, but he saw nothing that could have such a large ship left so completely destroyed, at least until one figure in particular caught his eye. That looks like Mihik, world's strongest swordsman, Naruto supplied Kiba, who was still waiting on an answer, but what would he be doing here? Naruto has heard of Dracula Mihik. Before he was rewarded the title of Shichibukai, he earns a fearsome reputation as the marine hunter, going after and slaying multiple formidable marines. Naruto's father was the only one alive to fight Mihik, and according to the details of the duel between them, it was as fierce as the duel between Shanks and Mihik. Why don't we go finding out? Kiba asked. You can hardly complain that meeting a member of the Shichibukai is boring. Let's just hope it doesn't get too exciting, Naruto responded. If he oversteps his bounds and starts attacking civilians, we'll be obligated to stop him, or maybe I should say to try to stop him. It was without warning Akamaru suddenly barked something as if he was trying to warn Naruto. Kiba translated. Akamaru tells me he wants you to know that you need to be very careful of trying to take on Mihik by yourself. Mihik is way too powerful for you to fight. Naruto looked offended and stared at Akamaru with disbelief. Are you kidding me? You don't have faith in my own abilities, Akamaru? If Akamaru says he's too dangerous to fight one-on-one, then you should listen to him, Kiba told him. You see he has Kenbenshoku haki. Kenbenshoku haki? Naruto repeated, what's that? Before Kiba could answer, a commotion occurs that caught their attention. Looking back to circumstances, the two see a green-haired young man with 3 swords approaching Mihik. Curious as to what was going on, he decided to see if anyone on the other ship had information. Hopping off and tying the ship to the Bereti, he saw a small vessel with 4 men on it, although a couple of them would probably be more accurately called boys than men. Who is that? He questioned them, and what does he think Hess doing? That's pirate hunter Zoro, one of them replied after turning to face his questioner, the greatest swordsman in East Blue. And his captain, boasted one of the younger passengers of the small vessel, a boy wearing a wide-brimmed straw hat. He looked like he was about to add something else. Instead, something behind Naruto caught his eye and his face lit up with excitement. That's a huge dog. He called out enthusiastically, hey Usopp, let's go pet him. Luffy, how can you be so carefree when Zoro is about to fight that monster? Usopp admonished, but his companion ignored him, grabbing the other boy with one hand and the side of the ship with his other, then he backed up stretching his arm as he went. Must be another devil fruit user. Anyway, having stretched his arm to several times its original length, Luffy lifted his feet and took off as if fired from a slingshot. He and his passenger crash landed behind him next to where Kiba and Akamaru had just gotten off the ship. Luffy seemed unfazed by the impact, but the same couldn't be said for Usopp, who had yet to stand up. But Luffy ignored that fact and proceeded to run around Akamaru excitedly examining him. Neither Akamaru nor Kiba seemed quite sure of how to react. Naruto, however, chose to turn his attention back to the two who were still on the ship. The pirate hunter? He parroted, so you're bounty hunters? That's right, responded the same man who answered before. Johnny and this is Yusaku. We may not be a match for Zoro, but he'll let you know we're pretty strong ourselves. So, what exactly is he doing? Naruto asked, still not having received a response to his earlier question. Challenging him to a fight to prove Hess the better swordsman, of course, Yusaku answered. Well, you should stop him before he gets hurt, he warned them. He may be the best swordsman in East Blue, but Mihik is the best swordsman in the Grand Line, and you're about to learn how great the gap between those two oceans is. Grand Line? Luffy asked from behind him, the word having caught his attention. Have you been there? I was born there, Naruto answered. In fact, this is the first time I've left it. That's great, Luffy said energetically. You should join my crew. I'm going there myself, and you could show me around when I get there. You don't even know my name and you're asking me to join your crew? Naruto replied, caught a bit off guard by the unorthodox request. I guess you're right, the boy admitted. Monkey D. Luffy, what's your name? Ensign Naruto Namikaze of the Marines, he supplied. There, now you can join my crew, Luffy declared, as if it were already a done deal. I appreciate the offer, he answered, still not sure how to react to the rather odd boy, but I'm already a Marine officer and a captain of my own crew. Luffy looked like he was prepared to argue further, so Naruto switched tactics and tried to distract him instead. Shouldn't you be more concerned with not losing the crewmen you already have? He asked. Ah. He cried out, my navigator ran off with my ship. Wake up Usopp, we have to go after them. While Luffy tried to shake Usopp back to consciousness, Naruto pondered his words. Wasn't that his ship over there? And why had his navigator run off with it? Maybe they hadn't agreed to join in the first place. Was this just some crazy kid who went around insisting people were part of his crew? Was he really even Zoro's captain? Speaking of Zoro, how was the fight going? Returning his attention to the match, Naruto was disappointed to see that Luffy's distraction had caused him to miss it. 2 of Zoro's swords had just been destroyed. Normally that would leave a swordsman weaponless, but the man had the 3rd sword held in his mouth. That was a technique Naruto had yet to witness. He also took note of a number of wounds Zoro had received from the fight. It was clear his body must be reaching its limit. Zoro is brave, but there is no way in hell he can match Mihik's true strength. A familiar voice spoke to him, something the two of you share Naruto. Confused, Naruto turns around to see where the voice comes from, and shocked to see his father, Admiral Mianto Namikaze, standing before him. Dad? Naruto gasped in shock. It can't be, you're dead. What are you doing here Naruto? Minato questioned his son. What? Naruto responded stupidly. I say what are you doing here? Minato questioned his son, more sharply. I am Marine officer like you dad, Naruto told him. I'm just doing my job. No Naruto, Minato objected. You here because you gone AWOL. You left your post without notice or permission. That's not true dad, Naruto defends himself. I didn't go AWOL. I was doing my job, cleaning the sea of pirates. Do I look like an idiot? his father rebuked. You go enjoying riding by stealing a former pirate ship, all because you dislike your post. You think this is a game and don't take it seriously in these circumstances. Dad Naruto tries to protest. To make matters worse, Minato continued to interrupt him. You decided to go the Grand Line because you felt the pirates here are not worthy for your fight. You're in overhead Naruto, just like Zoro there. Naruto's eyes were back to Zoro who was cut down by Mihawk before he fell into the ocean waters. Johnny and Yusaku had already dived into the water to swim toward their wounded companion. A newly enraged Luffy, meanwhile, used that odd power of his to rocket his body toward Mihawk in an attack of his own. Dad, I know Naruto tries to say something. Stop it Naruto, Minato cuts him off again. You seem to don't care if you get yourself killed doing something reckless and stupid. I guess you never care how everyone on Leaf Island would feel if you got killed, especially Bawako and Konohamaru. Dad Naruto tries to say something more, but he was interrupted by Kiba. Naruto, did you hear what I say? Kiba shouted. Huh? Naruto responded confusedly. I say what are your orders? He asked once more. Mihawk is gone, leaving the pirates for us to deal with. Naruto turned his attention back to the battle. Mihawk was gone, and Johnny and Yusaku managed to save Zoro who falls in the ocean. They now had to deal with the threat from Don Krieg and his pirates. We fight, Naruto told him, defend Cooks from the pirates. Are you okay? Kiba asked him, looking concerned. It's like your mind is somewhere else. I'm fine Kiba, Naruto lied, looking for sign of his father, yet he was nowhere in sight. Just what happened back there? 0000. The first thing Naruto did was summon 50 clones. In his current strength, he was strong enough to create 50 clones at once. He gave orders for his clones to shield the Cooks from the pirates. Don't worry, Naruto told the Cooks, my clones and I will protect you all. Hey, don't underestimate our chefs. A blond man wearing a black suit told Naruto. The man then proceeded to tear through the pirates with an impressive display of martial skill that seemed to center entirely on kicking. He was soon joined by the other chefs, who also were managing to get the better of the pirates. It looked like they might not need his help at all. Intrigued by the fight he came to a stop next to Kiba and Akamaru, who were also content for now to simply watch the fight. Just then he saw two of the chefs hurtle past him. They'd been sent in that direction by a large man covered in circular pieces of armor, which had just climbed out of the water. His very appearance lifted the morale of the remaining pirates. It's Pearl. One cried out, hell teach those chefs why we're the strongest pirates in East Blue. Pearl continued to approach the group chefs, most of whom backed off in response to his advance. This one look interesting, Kiba declared, come on Akamaru, let's see what he can do. The first thing Akamaru did is to power up both himself and Kiba. Besides his fur turning red, Akamaru was much bigger and stronger than before and was ferocious looking. Kiba was also different in size and height, with a demonic animal-like look on his face. Akamaru pulled out ahead of Kiba, heading towards Pearl, with great speed. Pearl braced for the impact as the large animal barreled toward him, but instead Akamaru passed just to his right, avoiding impact. Looks like your pet missed, he pointed out condescendingly to a still charging Kiba, and even if he hits me, it would do him no good. If you think that, then you may want to look behind you, Kiba shouted back. Turning around he saw Kiba's claim hadn't been a trick, as Akamaru had reversed course and was once heading straight for him. Pearl prepared himself for the dog's attack. Unfortunately, he had apparently forgotten Kiba behind him, as he found himself sandwiched between a Camorist Tsuuga and a shoulder tackle from Kiba. His armor proved insufficient for such an attack, shattering on both sides, and not even absorbing enough force to preventing Pearl from losing consciousness as a result of the double impact. He was supposed to be one of your strongest fighters. Kiba asked, clearly disappointed, beginning to think Naruto was right about East Blue. Nobody moves. A new voice yelled. The call directed his attention to a pirate who had a gun pointed directly at the head of an aging chef, Jin. The blonde chef from earlier yelled angrily, what do you think you're doing? I don't want you or anyone else hurt, Sanji, Jin replied, just leave the ship and I'll let him go. Taking hostages, just what Naruto would expect of pirates scum. Well, he wasn't about to let them get away with it. He summoned a clone from behind Jin, one which was immediately spotted by a number of the pirates watching the scene. But his clone, knowing it had to act quickly, grabbed Jin's arm before a cry of warning could go up and wrenched it away from his captive. Sanji was already in motion and followed up with a powerful kick to Jin's head that sent him flying away from the man he now stood protectively over. Thank you for help, Sanji said to the clone, but let me handle Jin. Naruto was inclined to grant his request. He wouldn't want anyone barging in on a fight that was personal to him, and since his clone shared his thought process, it nodded its own assent a moment later. Look out. Kiba yelled from nearby, and Naruto glanced over his shoulder to see a giant morning star heading right for him. Doubting he had time to dodge, he prepared his Tekai only to have Luffy jump into its path and sending it hurtling right back at Krieg with his bare hands. The armored pirate dodged his own weapon, which slammed into a mast that had somehow remained standing prior to that point. But whatever luck had saved it so far clearly had run dry, as its base splintered into pieces. Then gravity took over and sent it tumbling back toward them, creating a bridge between the Baratie and the piece of ship Krieg stood on. What exactly exactly is your power?" Naruto asked curiously, impressed by the display. "I'm made of rubber," Luffy replied proudly, "blows like that can't hurt me, how about yours?" "I had the power to create clone versions of me," Naruto told him before he cracks his knuckles in anticipation and asks, "You want take down Krieg together?" "Yeah. It will be fun," Luffy answered cheerfully. So the two of them charged across the mast toward the captain of the pirates. In response, the man lifted his shield and fired several wooden stakes at the two of them. Using Soru, Naruto was able to easily avoid them and even knocked a couple out of the way that looked like they were heading for Luffy. "Not bad," Krieg admitted as their charge neared him, "but how will you deal with this?" He then flipped over his cape, revealing that the now outward-facing side was covered in spikes, protecting him from all sides. Naruto drew up short, trying to decide how to react. His clones would dispel instantly if they tried to attack that, but if they were careful, they could grab the spikes and toss Krieg and his stupid cape around. But his musings became moot as Luffy hadn't paused even for a second, slamming his fist right into the spikes, protecting Krieg's head, and knocking the man forcefully to the ground. The blood made it clear his power didn't protect him from sharp objects, and Naruto couldn't decide whether to be impressed or appalled by Luffy's attack. But he was able to decide on a course of action, so he quickly dropped the shield and cloak Krieg had just dropped and tossed them into the ocean. He then summoned 3 clones and surrounded the pirate captain, who was just recovering from the attack. "I'll admit I hadn't expected such a reckless assault," Krieg stated, "but don't fool yourselves into thinking you have a chance. My armor is indestructible, so you two can punch away at me all day, and it won't do you any good. Then you won't mind if I put that to the test, will you?" Naruto asked, relishing the challenge. Naruto and his clones all charged simultaneously, hitting Krieg's armor with their strongest punches. Naruto had to admit the armor was hard, as he was now feeling a pain in his knuckles, but he was more than satisfied when several cracks appeared in the indestructible armor. "How can this be?" Krieg asked in disbelief, noticing the cracks himself. "Gomu Gomu no Bazooka." Luffy's double fist strike lifted Krieg right off the ground and sent him flying backwards. Only the quick thinking of one of his clones prevented Krieg from going over the edge as it jumped into his path and sent him back to the ground with a flying kick. The force of the kick sent that clone into the ocean instead, the power of which instantly destroyed it. But that was a small price to pay to keep Krieg from escaping to where neither Luffy nor he could follow. In addition, the further attacks on his armor had caused the cracks to spread to the point where the armor itself now shattered and fell off as Krieg slowly stood without its protection. The following minute must have been one of the worst of his life. Needless to say, the pirate captain was no longer conscious after being subject to a brutal beating from the 2 devil fruit users. Turning back to the Baratie, he was expecting to receive shocked disbelief from Krieg's crew, but he was disappointed to see there wasn't a conscious pirate in sight. Just a pile of bodies was Kiba was stacking their limp forms. Even Jin had been dealt with, most likely by Sanji, who stood over the fallen man. "Well, I think we did a pretty good job," Naruto declared proudly. "Your power is great," Luffy replied. "You could be like a whole band by yourself." "Except I don't know how to play any instruments," Naruto answered, again caught off guard by the odd boy's thought pattern. "That's too bad," Luffy replied. "I need a musician in my crew." "I'm going to take care of the pirates if you don't mind," Naruto told him, hoping to change the subject before Luffy had a chance to fixate on convincing Naruto to join his crew again. "I'll make sure to tell them about your contribution if you're concerned about the bounty." "I don't care about the bounty," Luffy proclaimed matter-of-factly. It was refreshing to see a bounty hunter who wasn't in it out of greed, even if he was a little off. "Well then, it was nice meeting you, but I guess this is where we part ways," he told Luffy, offering his hand. Luffy grasped the hand with a smile. "I'm sure we'll see each other again in the Grand Line," he predicted. 00000, former pirate ship, East Blue Sea. "Some party they threw us last night, huh?" Kiba asked. After Luffy and the other left, Zeph, the head chef and owner of Baratie, offered to a free grand feast for Naruto and Kiba. It had been quite a party, although with how much Kiba drank and how much ramen he eats, Naruto had to wonder if he really recalled that fact or just assumed it to be so. He might not think so fondly of it if he had a clearer recollection of his actions. "We did save their restaurant," Naruto reminded him. "It was kind of the least they could do." "Pity that Luffy kid had already left, though," Kiba added. "He seemed like the type that would enjoy a party. Anyway, where are we headed next?" "To the nearest marine base," Naruto answered. "What?" Kiba asked, probably wondering if he'd heard right. "I thought we were avoiding them." "We don't exactly have a lot of choice," he explained. "We've got a hold filled with over 50 pirates. We'll run out of food and water in no time with that many, and there wasn't exactly enough of their ship left to use our usual methods. There's got to be some other option," Kiba insisted. "We could just steal the ship from the next pirates we find. And if we don't find one before we starve to death?" Naruto asked. A couple of missing ensigns isn't exactly a big deal. There's a good chance that even if the base we're heading to has been informed, they've forgotten all about it. I still don't like it, Kiba complained. Naruto didn't like it either, dreading the moment the ocean would end. But eventually it did just that, a marine base coming into view. As his clones pulled into port and docked the ship, Naruto went down to the hold and brought up Krieg. He'd take care of the most dangerous captive first and deal with the rest later. Seeing Krieg again, he couldn't help but let out a small chuckle. He knew the man was strong, and not wanting to risk him breaking his bindings, he had gone a bit overboard with the rope and chains. He looked almost like a deformed mummy. His head was the only part left free, and that only if you didn't count the gag. As there was no way the man could walk, Naruto lifted him over his shoulder and began to carry him away, leaving Kiba and Akamaru behind. He left the ship, quickly being joined by an escort of marine guards when they just recognized who it was he bringing in. He was grateful Kiba had talked him into changing out of his uniform when he had, as Head had a chance to clean it to pristine shape. He was nervous enough about this as it was. He didn't need a filthy uniform to make him any more self-conscious. On a positive note, no one had yet brought up his escape from Shell Island, not even after Head led his captives into the base, bureaucrats scurrying trying to figure out what to do with Krieg. He was beginning to think he would get away with this until someone else walked into the room. You. Naruto and Nezumi yelled at the same time when they'd spotted each other. Of all the bases he could have gone to, it just had to be this one, he recalled. Now that Nezumi said he had plans to work in East Blue, Naruto just wished Head thought to check which base that was. I heard about how you went AWOL, Nezumi said smugly, but I never imagined I would be able to see you brought to justice myself. Fortune must be smiling on me today. While Nezumi surely had plenty more taunts ready, he was denied the opportunity to use them as the doors burst open, allowing the entry of a highly agitated man. Although clearly older, he bore a striking resemblance to Nezumi and sported a few fresh cuts and bruises. This must be Nezumi's father, who went by the same name if his memory served. Father, Nezumi called out to the man, confirming their relationship. I caught that Naruto fugitive I told you about. I don't have time for your childish rivalries right now. His father, Nezumi Katem Sr. snapped. There are bigger issues at stake. I need to. Is that, Don Krieg? Naruto was suddenly grateful no one in the base had yet figured out what to do with the man. Showing off the good Head done may put the marine captain in a better mood to be lenient. Yes, sir, he answered with a salute. Hess, one of the pirates I've captured since I began patrolling East Blue. You mean to say a punk like you managed capture such an infamous pirate? He questioned Naruto as if expecting this to be some big prank. He does have monster strength, his son informed him, but that's all the more reason to lock him up, Hess a menace. I should listen to my son. I could have you locked up right next to your prisoners, Captain Izumi threatened, but I think I may be better served turning one monster against another. Sir? Naruto asked, hoping for clarification. They'll let you continue on your way, he declared, but only if you agree to hunt down a pirate by the name of Monkey D. Luffy. Luffy? Naruto questioned, wondering if there was any chance he was referring to someone else by that name. Goofy kid that wears a straw hat and has a devil fruit power that gave him a rubber body. You know him? Nezumi asked curiously. I ran into him once before, Naruto admitted, but I thought he was a bounty hunter. He was with pirate hunter Zoro. Yes, he was with Zoro, Nezumi confirmed, but only because the pirate hunter has turned to piracy himself. He and his crew took out Arlong, stole all of his treasure, harassed the people Kokoyashi village, and then attacked the marine force I was leading in an attempt to restore order. I barely escaped with my life. Inwardly Naruto was kicking himself for not figuring this out earlier. Really, a bounty hunter who didn't care about a prize like the one offered for Krieg. He just knew there was no way a pirate would be able to collect that, so I had let Naruto take care of them. It'll do it, Naruto said firmly. He'll capture Luffy and his crew. If you succeed, I may even see about getting you pardoned for your actions, Nezumi offered, although I think my son here is hoping you'll fail. I guess one of the two of us is going to get our revenge. It'll just have to make sure it's you then, sir, Naruto replied. 00000. Kokoyashi Village. Kanomi Islands, East Blue Sea. Nejiko gasped at the figures she saw walking up the path to Kokoyashi Village. Arlong and his crew had just been defeated. What were dozen fishmen doing here? At the head of their group was a large red fishman. Normally the fishman had at least somewhat human-like faces, but if you buried this one up to his neck in sand, Nejiko suspected he might be mistaken for a normal fish lying on the ground. As they approached the small group of villagers who had been chatting with Nejiko, Genzo immediately stepped in front of her protectively, not at all frightened by his display. The leader walked up to the heavily scarred man. Tell me, human, what happened to Arlong Park? He asked menacingly. It was destroyed, Genzo answered, and unless you want to be taken out like your leader was, I suggest you leave town and never return. I know it was destroyed, the fishman snapped back. I want to know how, and where is Arlong? I'm not fool enough to fall for your transparent lie. Believe what you want, Nejiko yelled at him from behind Genzo, but it's still the truth. Enraged by her reply, Nejiko saw the fishman prepared to backhand her. She closed her eyes reflexively before hearing a large crash, Worried Genzo had just taken the blow for her. She opened her eyes only to see the sound had actually come from the other two fishmen. Or more accurately, from their bodies crashing into the ground next to their leader and going limp. Her would-be assaulter, now the only remaining fishman, had stopped his intended blow mid-swing, shocked by unexpectedly violent arrival of his companions. Back away from the villagers, a young blonde-haired marine called out from behind the fishman. Next to him stood a darker-haired boy and a very large white dog. They must have all been so focused on the fishmen no one had seen them coming. Not looking at all worried by how easily his men had been defeated, the fishman pirate casually walked over to the blonde marine who had just spoken. "You may have caught my men off guard, but you'll find him not so easily beaten," he boasted. "Is that so?" the marine asked almost mockingly. "Then why don't you show me what you're made of?" Just remember that you asked for it, human," he replied with an evil smile. Walking up to his challenger, the difference in their size became very apparent. The blonde wasn't at all short by human standards, looking to be about 6 feet tall. But the fishman stood almost a foot taller and had to weigh at least twice as much, and he intended to take advantage of that fact, throwing his whole body into a single punch aimed at the young man's chest. Najiko cringed as the marine made no attempt to dodge the attack as it barreled in, but rather than breaking ribs and knocking the smaller of the combatants away, the fishman's fist halted abruptly when it struck him. "You call that a punch?" the blonde mocked, appearing completely unfazed by the attack. "This is a punch." So saying, he threw right hook at the fishman, although it almost turned into an uppercut given the differences in their height. But whatever kind of punch it was, it connected to the side of his target's face, twisting his whole body to the side and sending him cartwheeling several yards before he came to a stop. When it became clear that he wasn't getting up again, the villagers swarmed the marine. "That was amazing," one of them called out. "That wasn't anything impressive," the darker-haired boy insisted, sounding a little jealous of the attention his companion was getting. "They were all really weak, Naruto was just showing off." "Well then, Naruto," Genzo stated walking over to the boys himself, "we're just grateful you and Kiba," Naruto provided, "and the dog is Akamaru." "Yes, Genzo gratefully, that you, Kiba and Akamaru showed up here. If there's anything we can do to repay you, just let us know." "Actually, we're here looking for a dangerous pirate by the name of Monkey D. Luffy," Naruto told them. "We heard he and his crew caused you some trouble and would appreciate any information you might have on where they went, or perhaps a description of their ship if anyone got a look at it." The villagers quickly grew silent at the revelation that their current saviors were hunting their previous saviors. "But Luffy is, hey," Genzo said. The sentence may have made more sense if Najiko hadn't accidentally stomped on his foot rather hard part way through. "Sorry," she pretended to apologize, but as Genzo was saying, "Luffy is very dangerous, you should avoid him for your own good." "He doesn't worry us," Kiba boasted. "We're combat specialists from Marine headquarters. You barely saw a fraction of what we can do just now." "Is that so?" Najiko asked sweetly. "Then did Captain Nezumi send you after Luffy?" "That's right," Naruto confirmed. "He specially charged us with bringing Luffy to justice." "In that case, he'll be happy to tell you what their ship looks like," Najiko told them. "It's a large vessel, painted completely black, with blood-red sails, and it must have at least 24 cannons." "That certainly sounds unique," Naruto answered. "Now do you have any idea where he's heading next?" "And I don't know where they're headed, but they sailed off to the east," Najiko lied. "Well, they're probably trying to throw off pursuit then," Naruto told his companion. He was quite clear he was heading toward the Grand Line. "We may be able to beat him to the entrance if we hurry." Najiko silently cursed that she hadn't been able to throw them off the trail, but at least they seemed to have believed her about the ship, but she realized there might be another way she could help her sister. "Please, if you are going after them, take me with you," Najiko requested. "What are you talking about?" Genzo yelled out in surprise. "Do you know how dangerous it would be to go with them?" "Yes, a marine vessel is no place for a civilian," Naruto replied. But his partner immediately pulled him to the side and began whispering furiously to him. "No rule against it, crazy not to, hot, just look at her," were some of the pieces she managed to catch Kiba saying. It was easy to see he was trying to change Naruto's mind and exactly why he was doing so she did her best to smile cutely whenever they looked her way. But despite Kiba's best effort, he seemed unable to sway the other marine. "I'm sorry, it's just too dangerous," he told her. If he wasn't going to cave that easily, then it was time for Najiko to kick the act up a notch. "I didn't want to tell you this," she began melodramatically, "but Luffy and his crew took my little sister. I know I may not be much help in a fight, but I just can't sit here and do nothing." A pretty good performance if she said so herself. She could see that Naruto was wavering, now to go in for the kill, Getting down on her knees, she looked up at him pleadingly and even succeeded in producing a couple of crocodile tears. "I'm a pretty good cook," she informed them in mock desperation, "or I could help clean, I'll find some way to contribute, please just take me with you." She could tell by the look on his face that she'd already won. It seemed that, like most men, he was unable to say no to a woman in tears. "Fine," he finally answered, "we'll give you 20 minutes to gather your things and say your goodbyes. If you're not back here by then, we're leaving without you." "Thank you, you won't regret this," she told him, turning to head to her house, more to hide the smirk she was struggling to suppress than out of any real hurry. But then again, maybe she should hurry. 20 minutes wasn't a lot of time. Not wanting to waste it, she ran back to her house and began to quickly pack her things. About a minute into the process, Genzo walked in. "What was that all about?" he asked her disapprovingly. "You're the one who was about to declare yourself a pirate sympathizer to a couple of thugs sent by Nezumi," Najiko fired back. "That's not the point," Genzo answered a little sheepishly. "What makes you think going with them is a good idea? Even if you can send them on a wild goose chase, they're hardly the only Marines around." "Maybe not, but they do seem pretty strong," Najiko argued, "and they're hunting Luffy specifically. And what happens if they ever find out what you're doing?" Genzo countered, "It's too dangerous." "They'll be careful," she replied stubbornly. They proceeded to lock stars in a contest of wills, but Genzo was the one to give up first, turning away with a sigh. "It's alright," he told her, "I know what this is really about." "What do you mean?" Najiko asked in confusion. "It's easy to see," he told her, "your little sister is off having wild adventures, and you're still here with little more than a boring old man to keep you company. It's no wonder you'd jump at a chance to head out into the world yourself." "You're not boring," she answered, trying to raise his spirits. But inwardly she wondered if he was right. She had been a little envious of Nami going off to travel the world. Maybe she'd let that subconsciously cloud her judgment. "Don't change your mind on my account," he said in a rather abrupt about-face from his previous position. "It'll be lonely with both of you girls gone, I'll admit, but I don't want you blaming me for having missed this opportunity." "What happened to it being too dangerous?" she asked him. "I didn't want you to go," he admitted, "but in all honesty, those two boys seem decent enough folk, really. I can't see it being nearly as dangerous as joining a pirate crew. Just take care of yourself." "I will," she promised him, giving him a quick hug. Then finishing her preparations, she made it back to where Naruto and Kiba were waiting and still had a few minutes to spare before her deadline. Najiko was glad to see them, worrying a bit on the way back that Naruto would have changed his mind and used the opportunity to leave her behind. "Ready to go?" Naruto asked her. "Yeah, let's head out," she suggested. Najiko hadn't expected to depart Kokoyashi village herself so soon after Nami had, but she was looking forward to swapping adventure stories with her sister someday. Although if Najiko had anything to do with it, that day would be far off, as she was going to do her best to keep these Marines far away from her sister. "This is your ship?" Najiko asked in surprise. The black-sailed vessel she stood in front of looked nothing like any marine ship she'd ever seen. "Yeah, we captured it from some pirates," Naruto informed her. "We decided we might as well put it to use, but we haven't had a chance to repaint the sails yet." "Are the Marines really so hard up for ships they couldn't give you one of their own?" Najiko queried. "That's a bit of a long story," Naruto told her hesitantly. "Yeah, nothing you need to worry about," Kiba added, looking decidedly nervous. They were obviously hiding something from her, but she decided not to press the subject. After all, she wasn't being entirely open with them, so instead, she boarded the ship, dragging the suitcase she'd packed behind her. "There are a number of empty quarters below deck," Naruto told Najiko after following her aboard. "Feel free to claim whichever one you want." Thanking him, she decided to take him up on his offer. Heading down the stairs and below deck, the hold contained a number of crates and barrels, and quite a bit of rope and chain. Looking around, she was wondering which room she should check first when one of the doors began to open. Did they have another crew member on board? But the person who walked out of the room was Naruto. How had he gotten down here before her? "What are you doing down here?" he demanded of her. "You, told me to pick a room," she replied, still trying to figure out what had just happened. "Oh? I did," he asked her. "Does that mean you're coming with us?" Yes," she'd replied, her confusion causing her response to come out as more of a question than a statement. "Have you picked out your room yet?" a familiar voice asked from behind Najiko. Spinning around quickly to face back toward the stairs, she confirmed it was indeed Naruto, dragging the still unconscious fishman behind him. She turned back and forth between the two Narutos several times to confirm she wasn't seeing things. "Ah, so you're identical twins?" she asked, glad to have a logical explanation for Naruto's earlier positional and behavioral changes. "Not exactly," the Naruto by the stairs answered. "It's probably easiest if I just showed you." Najiko jumped as two more Narutos popped into existence next to her without warning, poking one of the new additions. She confirmed it felt solid, then it's one, the two new ones, and the one that had first started this situation by coming out of the room vanished. "Pretty neat, huh?" Naruto said proudly. You know, I'm going to go and pick my room now, Najiko answered. I could certainly use bed to lie down on. You better get used to strange things, Naruto advised. Lots of people on the Grand Line have devil fruit powers, and many of their powers are even more unusual than mine. A couple of days ago, she'd been sure stories about devil fruit were simply myths. Now she'd personally seen the powers of two people who had consumed them, one of whom she was traveling with to a place where such people were common. Just what had she gotten herself into? 0000. Former pirate ship, East Blue Sea. Naruto stood at the bow of the ship enjoying the sea breeze. One good thing that had come out of his meeting with the two Nezimus was that Head had a chance to get some spare uniforms. He just felt more comfortable wearing one for some reason. He heard footsteps behind him and turned to see they belonged to Najiko. He still had reservations about bringing a civilian, and they were only magnified by how shell-shocked the blue-haired young woman was the other day when she'd first learned about his power. Thankfully, by the next morning it appeared she had fully recovered. She even took a camera's devil fruit power in stride. So, how much do you know about Luffy's crew? Najiko asked him. Well, Thieves, pirate hunters Oro and some long-nosed kid named Yusuf. He counted off. There were a couple of bounty hunters named Yasaku and Johnny, and a cook by the name of Sanji who associated with him, but I'm not sure if they're members of his crew or not. I guess you already know about all of them. I gotta look at, Najiko told him. I was hoping I could help you there. Don't worry, we'll find them, Naruto promised her. But she didn't seem terribly comforted by his assurance. The poor girl was probably still worried about what the pirates would do to her sister. Anyway, you said you hadn't been able to repaint the sails yet, Najiko stated. Is there any reason for that? We don't have any paint, he answered. I thought that might be it, she said cheerfully. We really should get some, unless you want to risk other Marines mistaking you for pirates. Yeah, we'll get around to that when we have some time, he replied. I also couldn't find any spare lumber, she added. What are we going to do if the ship needs repairing? And you don't have much variety in food. I said I could cook, but I can't exactly work miracles. You know, we could stop back at my village quickly. I'm sure everyone would be happy to give us the supplies we need after how you helped us. Turning back now is too far out of our way, Naruto pointed out. Najiko looked disappointed by his pronouncement, and he wondered if she might be feeling a bit homesick already. She could be beating around the bush, not wanting to admit that openly after the scene she made the other day. You know, if you're having second thoughts about leaving home, I'm sure we can find someone who will take you back, he offered. No, it's not that, she quickly answered. I just think we need to be fully prepared. You said yourself the Grand Line was a dangerous place. Actually, Naruto replied thoughtfully, Lode Town should be only about an hour from here. We could stop there and get supplies without wasting much time. That sounds great, Najiko cheerfully declared. Besides, there's a good chance Luffy and his crew will stop in Lode Town as well, he told her. Oh? Why is that? She asked, tensing up a bit. It seemed however much she wanted to save her sister, she still grew nervous at the thought of facing the pirates again. Not that he could blame her, an ordinary civilian would be no match for even normal pirates, and Luffy was no normal pirate. It's the birthplace and execution site of Gold Rogers, Naruto answered. It's almost like a tourist spot for pirates. In that case, do you mind if I take a turn in the crow's nest? Najiko queried. I'm the most likely to recognize their ship if we come across it. Go right ahead, he responded. 0000. Lode Town, East Blue Sea. As they neared Lode Town, Najiko examined the other ships in dock through the telescope. Sure enough, there was the Going Merry. Of all the rotten luck, why did she have to suggest this in the first place? But there was still hope the two parties wouldn't run into other. After all, her companions just wanted to get in, get their supplies, and leave as quickly as possible. Their ship isn't here, she yelled down to Naruto, who was at the helm. Or maybe it was one of his clones. She hadn't figured out a way to tell the difference. But it looks like there's another port farther north, she added. We should check there as well. Setting course now, he yelled back. Unsurprisingly, there was no ship in the northern dock that matched the false description she'd given them. So she climbed back down to the deck as the ship was docked. Phase 1 of her plan was a success. Now she just needed to make sure they didn't bump into anyone from Luffy's crew. But this was a pretty big town, so what were the odds of that? She just needed to try to convince them to stick together. If they split up, she won't be able to keep an eye on both Marines. Akamaru and I should stay here and guard the ship, Kiba suggested. Yes. Najiko responded, but winced as she realized she sounded far too excited about that. I mean, that's a good idea. If they thought it odd, they wouldn't say anything, and it certainly made her job easier to only have one of them running around town. So leaving with Naruto, they made their way into town. So, do you and your sister have any family back in Kokoyashi village? Naruto inquired. No, she answered solemnly. Our mother was killed when Arlong took over our village. We don't have any family left, but each other. Sorry, Naruto replied. I didn't mean to bring up any bad memories. Don't worry about it, she told him. It happened a long time ago, not that you ever truly get over it. I know what you mean, he replied. I'm an orphan too. My father died over a decade ago. You learn to deal with it, but you never really stop missing them. Looking down a side street to her right, her eyes went wide. She'd let herself get too caught up in their conversation and forgotten what she was supposed to be doing here. Now Zoro was running directly their way, frantically scanning the area. She spotted a shop that looked promising, grabbed Naruto's hand, and dragged him inside. What's the big rush? Naruto asked her after they were safely inside. Just excited about shopping, she answered nervously. You know how women get about shopping. Inwardly she kicked herself for coming up with such a lame excuse. You are excited about buying lumber? He asked dubiously as he examined the contents of the hardware store they'd entered. They have paint too, she quickly pointed out, grabbing up a large can of white paint and trying to smile convincingly. Eventually, he nodded and went around looking for the wood and tools they would need. That's all you're buying? Najiko asked when she saw him preparing to make his purchases. It seems like enough for now, he answered. It's better to err on the side of caution, she told him, and proceeded to grab up lumber from around the store and add it to the stack he was carrying. Soon it was piled high enough that it blocked his vision. That will help if they have any unluckier encounters. Naruto paid for their supplies and managed to maneuver his way outside the shop again. This is a lot of stuff, he complained. I'm going to get some clones to help me. No. She ordered quickly. I mean you don't want to cause a scene, don't you? Not everyone is used to seeing devil fruit powers. I guess not, he admitted, but I can't even see where I'm going. Don't worry, I'll guide you, she assured him. Now they just needed to get some food and they could leave. Wait, there was Zoro again, running toward them from directly ahead. Not having time to be choosy this time, she twisted Naruto sideways and shoved him through the nearest door, following him inside. What are we doing in a clothing store? He asked. I need to buy a raincoat, she lied. It looks like it's going to rain. The sky looked clear to me, Naruto countered. Just trust me, I know these things, she insisted. You should probably buy one too. It'll risk it, he responded. So she began to look over the raincoat. When she concluded she'd stalled long enough to give the green-haired swordsman plenty of time to get out of the area, she selected a dark purple coat and purchased it. Continuing on their shopping trip, she located a grocery store and led Naruto inside. The place seemed to have a pretty nice selection. Fruits, vegetables, a wide variety of spices, a blonde cook. Looking again she confirmed that was indeed Sanji shopping in the same store as them. At least his back was turned, so he hadn't seen them yet. Running over to him, she shoved him to the ground behind an aisle that would hide him from Naruto's view if he peeked out from around the lumber. Close your eyes and wait there quietly for a minute, she whispered to Sanji in her sultriest tone. I have a surprise for you that I know you'll enjoy. Sanji listened to her without even glancing back to see who had said it, so she left the now grinning fool there and went back to Naruto. This store doesn't look very good, she whispered to him. We should go to another one. Why are we whispering? He asked. Because it would be rude if the owner of the store heard me insulted, she told him. Leading him back to the door, she started to walk out, but came to a sudden stop when she saw Zoro run by a third time. What on earth was he doing? She watched him run into an alley a short distance away and again began to leave the store. But she came up short a second time when Zoro ran right back out of the same alley he'd just entered. That's it, she was going to kill that idiot. What do you keep stopping for? Naruto asked. There's a crowd outside, Najiko claimed. I just don't want you bumping into them. Don't worry, though, they're moving on. Her luck from that point improved a little. She was able to find another grocery store and buy some food and spices without running into any other familiar faces, and surprisingly, it had started pouring while they'd been in the store. Looks like you were right about the rain, Naruto conceded. Next time y'all know not to doubt me, she answered with a small laugh. It figured that the only luck she'd have today was being right about the bad weather. At least she had her raincoat. Setting down the groceries she was carrying, she took her coat out of its bag and began to put it on. Meanwhile, Naruto had managed to find his way outside and was already being soaked by the rain. Stop that pirate. A feminine voice cried out. Despite the fact she'd only gotten as far as putting one arm into the sleeve of her new coat, Najiko ran outside in response to the call. But she was relieved to see it wasn't one of Luffy's crew, instead being a man with a big red nose who looked more like a clown than a pirate. Turning sidewise so he could get a look at the man, Naruto moved in front of his path to block him, but instead of a collision, the pirate split into pieces. His upper body flew over Naruto's head while his feet ran right between his legs. She watched his parts reattach themselves on the other side and continued running toward the docks. She still wasn't used to seeing devil fruit powers on display. But turning back, she saw that the woman who had called out hadn't slowed her own run and crashed into Naruto. Both of them went sprawling with the lumber and tools Naruto was carrying tumbling all over the place. Naruto. The woman reacts as they recovered. Tenten. he replied. Apparently the two of them knew each other. "Ah, I don't have time for this," Tenten cried out, jumping to her feet. "Buggy is getting away." She then ran off after the departing form of the pirate. "I'm going to help her," Naruto informed Nezuko. In a flash, two clones were next to Nezuko gathering up the fallen supplies, while the real Naruto ran off after Tenten, not wanting to be left behind. Nezuko got up and followed him. As she ran, she got her other arm into her raincoat so it wouldn't drag behind her, but didn't see the point in buttoning it up as she was already soaked. It quickly became obvious that even her top speed wasn't enough to keep up. Naruto was gaining on Tenten, but both were pulling farther ahead of her. "Wait for me," she called out. Glancing back, Naruto summoned a third clone. The clone scooped her up in its arms without warning and ran with her in pursuit of the original Naruto. She struggled reflexively for a moment before calming down. As embarrassing as it was, this was the only way she'd be able to keep from getting left behind. Still, being carried through the street, soaking wet, was not how she'd envisioned the day going. 0000. Big Top, East Blue Sea. Buggy and their crew had made it back to their ship and sailed off as quickly as they could hoist the anchor. As they pulled away, he let out a sigh of relief for having escaped that island. "Captain, a ship just left the dock in pursuit of us," Moji informed him. Grabbing a telescope, he looked at the ship himself. Worried Smoker was coming after him, but in all the rain he wasn't able to make out who was on board. "Keep running," he ordered, deciding to play it safe. But the other ship proved faster, slowly gaining on them. Still, as their distance shrunk he was able to get a better look at their pursuers. He didn't see Smoker anywhere on the other ship, just that markswoman who was jazzing him earlier and a couple more young marines, and she'd soon learn that she is biting off more than she could chew. "Bring us about," he ordered, prepare to open fire. Turning the ship until their port cannons were facing the other vessel, they fired 3 shots, 2 of them went wide to either side. However, Buggy was pleased to see the third taking a trajectory that would have it land right on top of a blonde marine standing at the bow of their ship. Seeing it hit, he turned to Kabaji beside him. "That was almost too gruesome," he caught it head screamed suddenly. What kind of a person could catch a cannonball with their bare hands like that? That kid was not normal. Still, he couldn't protect the entire ship at once. "Keep firing," Buggy ordered. "I want that ship gone." The end of his order was cut off as he was forced to dodge the cannonball the young man had just caught, had thrown it back at him. Examining the hole left in his deck, he struggled to get his heart rate back under control, realizing how close that had come to hitting him. That kid really is not normal. Of course, with Buggy's ship no longer fleeing, the other vessel was closing rapidly, and while he was still trying to recover from the shock of the most recent attack, his attacker himself landed on the Big Top's deck. "You're boarding my ship." Buggy mocked the blonde. "Do you really think one person can take on my entire crew? How about 10? He asked as 9 more blondes popped into existence around him. That made 9 copies of a boy that could catch a cannonball and throw it back. As he was realizing that, another boy, a large dog, and that markswoman from before all jumped across, the 2 ships now having been pulled up next to each other. "My crew is still more than capable of handling you themselves," he said as quickly flew up above the ship and out of range. "Captain Buggy." Several of them cried out in protest, but they weren't given much time for protest as they were attacked by their opponents. It's not like they had any room for complaint in the first place. He was just more valuable coordinating the fight from up here where he could get a good view. "You call yourself a lion?" he yelled at Richie. "How can you be losing to a dog? Bear, see?" His motivational speaking would be the key to their victory. He spotted someone else who looked to be in need of his help. "First Zoro and now you're losing to a woman, Kabaji," he berated. Although oddly enough, while had been trying to motivate Kabaji, the woman was the one who seemed to be fighting harder in response to his call. "Stop lying around and get up," he ordered his crew, as the majority of those cowards were no longer participating, instead being sprawled out on the ground. It was then he noticed one of the blondes was standing over his feet, which were still back on the deck, examining them curiously. "Don't touch those," he screamed. "Oh?" the boy said in response. "You mean I shouldn't do this?" He then stomped down on one of them hard, and Buggy was sure he felt some of the bones snap from the impact. Furious at the boy for the assault, he flew down and got right into his face. "I told you not to do that," he screeched. But the blonde just smiled, and it was then he came to the realization that he was now only inches from the person head flown up to avoid. The last thing he remembered was a fist heading for his face. 0000. Low Town, East Blue Sea. "I want to thank you again for your help, Naruto," Tenten told him. "Without the use of your ship, Buggy and his crew would have gotten away. Thus doing my duty," he told her. "Anyway, there is no reason you can't take these 3 back by yourself." The 3 he was referring to were Buggy, Kabaji, and Moji, the 3 leaders of the Buggy pirates. Buggy was wrapped up in several nets, which were themselves put in a large sack that Naruto was carrying to make sure no body parts got away. The other 2 were more traditionally bound and walking behind them. "Nonsense," she told him. "This is the second event I owe you a lot for. I'm not letting you go without meeting my captain. I'll make sure he puts you in for a commendation." Naruto Naruto acquiesced, but still didn't look happy. He must be one of those people who just wasn't comfortable with praise. They soon entered the base, allowing themselves to get out of the storm. Another marine approached the two of them plus 3 captives as they dripped all over the entranceway. "We've recaptured Buggy the Clown," she informed him. "Where's Captain Smoker and Ensign Tashigi?" "We're sorry, Ensign Tenten," he replied, "but they left town to chase after Straw Hat Pirates. They had been looking for you before they left, but no one could find you. She had been left behind. Smoker and Tashigi were after the Straw Hat Pirates without her." "That's just great." "Wait," Naruto said to the man, "Luffy was here in Lode Town." "Yeah, but he managed to escape," the marine responded. "Why? Have you run into them before?" "We were chasing after the Straw Hat Pirates as well," Naruto answered, "but we didn't know they were here on the island." "They are after them too," asked Tenten. "If that's the case, I have a favor to ask you. Please, take me with you." I don't know if that's a good idea," he replied. "I know I'm the one who owes you," she admitted, "so I shouldn't be asking for more favors, and if you're both going after the Straw Hat Pirates, I might run into my captain." He still appeared to be mulling over the idea, probably wondering if she'd be worth taking. Crashing into him earlier probably hadn't made the best impression. "That's not what I'm worried about," he reassured her. "It's just forget it, if you're that determined to come, I'd be happy to have you along." "Thank you," she replied graciously. "You won't regret this. I'll find a way to pay you back for everything someday. I'll just grab a couple of things and meet you at the ship." As Tenten turned around run off to get her things, and Buggy, who was contained in a sack, spit out threats towards Naruto's direction. "Just you wait, you bastard," Buggy yelled from in the sack. "When I get out of here, I'll make you pay for this. You'll regret the day you ever meet Buggy the Clown." "Oh, you want a rematch?" Naruto asked threateningly. "I'm sorry," Buggy quickly answered. "Just kidding." "Smart," Naruto replies with a smirk. 0000. Former pirate ship, East Blue Sea. Naruto saw Tenten making her way through the rain to the ship, carrying a satchel over her shoulder. The worst of the storm seemed to have passed, but there was still a good amount of rain falling. He greeted her as she came aboard the vessel. "We didn't have time for proper introductions before," he declared, "but this is Ensign Kiba, Akamaru, and Ichiko." Tenten nodded to each one as he introduced them. "Everyone, this is Ensign Tenten," he continued. "She'll be joining our crew. I'm sorry this isn't the best weather for a welcoming party." "Nice job finding her," Kiba whispered approvingly to Naruto. "I'm sorry," Tenten said, addressing Najiko, "but I didn't catch your rank." "I'm not in the Marines," Najiko replied simply. "Najiko's sister was captured by the Straw Hat Pirates," Naruto added. "She's come along to help rescue her." "I'm sorry to hear that," Tenten told her, "but I promise I'll do my best to help bring them to justice." "Yeah, thanks," Najiko replied with a strained smile. "That's just what I wanted to hear." Naruto nodded, impressed she was trying to put on a front of cheerfulness for Tenten's sake when the thought of her sister being held by pirates obviously made her uneasy. "If you don't mind my asking, how did you get your own ship already?" Tenten inquired. He did mind her asking, but Naruto wasn't about to say that. Najiko, however, was kind enough to answer for him while he was still deliberating how best to respond. "A marine captain by the name of Nezumi sent them after Luffy," she said. "He got beat up by the Straw Hat Pirates himself, so he sent some combat specialists after them." "That makes sense," she replied to Naruto's relief. "I've seen Naruto fight on more than one occasion and he's very impressive." "I'm really strong too, you know," Kiba claimed. "Buggy's crew was just too weak for you to see what I can really do." I wasn't implying you weren't," she assured Kiba. "I just didn't get much of a chance to see you fighting in all the chaos." "Well, forgive me for not having a flashy power or anything," responded Kiba petulantly. "Now that we're all acquainted, let's shove off," Naruto ordered. "The longer we delay, the farther behind we get." So they left the dock and set course for Reverse Mountain. Since this wasn't a marine vessel, that would be the only way they could enter the Grand Line. It didn't take long for the rain to let up, and once the wind had dried the sails enough, Naruto set his clones to work and finally repainted the sails white. Before the paint had even finished drying, Reverse Mountain came into sight. It was then his clone up in the crow's nest pointed out an oddity to him. Off to the side, a fair way from the entrance, was a small marine vessel that appeared to have crashed into the side of the mountain. The currents were supposed to be tricky around the entrance, but they crashed pretty far off for them to have simply been pushed away by the currents. Either way, he decided to investigate and see if they needed help. As they got closer, Naruto was able to make out a number of marines standing on the ship. It seemed someone did need help after all. But when he was close enough to make out through the telescope just which was on the ship, he gasped. "That can't be," he said out loud. "What can't be?" Tenten asked from next to him. "See for yourself," he told her, handing off the telescope. She examined the ship herself before letting out a gasp of her own. "I don't believe it," she declared. "I'm going drop anchor a short distance from them," he informed her. "I don't want to risk getting the ship too close to the shallows. Then I'll be taking a lifeboat over to see I can help them. Care to join me?" I guess, she replied unenthusiastically. Making good on his plan, Naruto soon lowered the small rowboat into the water and rowing the two of them over to other ship. When he got there, someone lowered a rope ladder for them to climb, only when he attempted to do so, he found it wasn't secured to anything and almost went over the edge of the boat. Frustrated, he grabbed the rope ladder and jumped up onto the other ship, making sure it was tied off properly. He dropped it to Tenten who used it to climb up. They then looked around to see a small crowd had gathered around them. Naruto, Tenten, imagine seeing you here, a portly marine told them. I haven't seen either of you since that naval exercise thing we won. And getting a closer look at them, he confirmed that, yes, every single one of them were the other recruits on that exercise. I'm sorry, I don't believe I ever got your name, Tenten replied. Seaman Chops, Mom, he told her, or at least that's what everyone calls me. Imagine all of us are together again now, what are the odds of that? I'm surprised you even all got the same assignment, Naruto pointed out. We must have really impressed them with our victory, Chops boasted. The proctor even told us had never seen a group like us before, that we had something special, so they decided to post us all together in a special group. It's called the Punishment Squad, another one added. That's an imposing name, don't you think? So, where's your captain? Tenten asked them instead of answering. You mean our current captain? Chops queried. We've had 6 captains since our squad was formed. Yes, your current captain will be fine, Tenten told them. Has been locked up in his room for days, Chops answered, but we hear a lot of crying from inside. We think he must be really sick. So I take it you had trouble navigating Reverse Mountain, Naruto said, changing the subject again. Oh, we weren't trying to use Reverse Mountain, Chops corrected him. We were just patrolling the area for any pirates who were. Then how did you crash? Naruto asked curiously. Well, none of us had ever seen Reverse Mountain before, Chops told him, so we were all so engrossed at getting a good look that we didn't notice that none of us were at the helm until we crashed. We're going to check how much damage your ship took, Naruto informed them, trying to end the conversation, lest he adds any more fuel to a growing headache. Tenten, you check the inside and I'll examine the outside. So Naruto went to the bow of the ship and jumped off onto land. From what he could see, there didn't appear to be any significant damage. The ship was simply stuck in shallow water. Soon Tenten came back up to talk to him. I'm not seeing any hulls or leaks, she reported. Looks good here too, he told her. Pull our boat on board, then I'll see about getting them unstuck. After the rowboat had been secured on the larger vessel, he summoned 4 clones to push the boat back into deeper water. Hopping on board himself, he signaled for them to start. Their strength proved sufficient as the boat moved backwards. The clones all vanished from following it into the seawater, but that was no matter. Tenten and Naruto helped them get the boat turned around and ready to sail again, before lowering their rowboat and climbing back down to it. It looks seaworthy, Naruto called back up to them, but I recommend going back to Logtown and having it professionally looked at. We'll do that, Chops called back, thanks again. Their whole crew stood at the stern of the ship waving goodbye. Wait, their whole crew was at the stern of their ship, which was current sailing directly toward where his was anchored. Get to the helm and turn your ship, he yelled out angrily. He saw Chops scurry off and waited anxiously as the 2 ships drew closer, but then the Punishment Squad ship did begin to turn, and he was relieved to see, narrowly avoided a collision. He watched them sail off briefly, kind of expecting something else to go wrong. That's not the way to Logtown, Tenten pointed out. Do you want to catch up to them and make sure they get back safely? He asked. I'm sure they'll be fine, she answered after pondering that for a moment. Returning to their ship, he was able to hoist the anchor and resume their previous course. Naruto took the helm and approached the treacherous waters at the entrance of Reverse Mountain. After getting a good look at where they were headed, Kiba came up to him nervously. You sure you can handle this? He asked. This isn't exactly your specialty. No, it isn't, he admitted, but I have a plan. Look. Kiba directed his focus at the bow of the ship where Naruto was pointing. There, he had 4 clones leaning over the edge and examining the water. I don't get it, Kiba admitted. Then just watch, we're about to enter, Naruto told him, not having time to explain. They were all closely watching the position of the rocks and examining the currents. Every so often, one of his clones would vanish, instantly giving him the memory of what it had just seen, which allowed him to quickly react accordingly and steer the ship. He would then summon another which would take its place. It was still difficult to pull off. Kiba was right, this wasn't his specialty, but he made it through the gates unscathed, and from there the current did most of the work itself. Everyone was gathered around him on the deck watching the ship go up the mountain appreciatively. This is amazing, Najiko declared excitedly. I've never seen anything like it. I haven't either, Tenten admitted. I traveled through the calm belt to get to East Blue. Soon they reached the apex and began their descent toward the Grand Line. He could see his ocean of birth coming into view, but that wasn't the only thing. Waiting at the bottom was a large marine vessel. He saw Kiba growing nervous beside him, but tried to stay calm himself. They didn't know what it was there for. When they hit the bottom and entered the Grand Line, the other ship began to approach them. Drawing up on the port side of their own ship, he saw an officer standing by the starboard railing looking at him. Ensign Naruto Namikaze, Ensign Kiba Inuzuka, he called out. I am under orders to escort your ship back to base. Well, that just perfect. Kiba says out loud. What do we do? Kiba asked Naruto. We follow them, Naruto replied. We knew this was going to happen sooner or later, it's time to face the music. Turning back to the officer on the other ship, Naruto called out his response. Understood, sir, we'll follow behind you. The marine vessel began to sail deeper into the Grand Line, and Naruto matched the ship's heading and sailed after it. Their two most recent additions to the crew were understandably confused about what was going on. Tenten, however, was the first to ask about it. What were you two talking about? She inquired, and do you have any idea what that was about? I guess there is no point in hiding it anymore, Naruto replied. It's true that Captain Nezumi sent us after the Straw Hat Pirates, but he didn't give us this ship. Then who did? She asked curiously. Actually, we just sort of took it, he admitted. They wanted it destroyed anyway, so it's not like we really stole it. I think they're more upset with us leaving without telling anyone. You mean you're just a couple of rogue marines? Nezuko interjected. It's not like that, Kiba said defensively. Our commanding officer was imprisoned before we even arrived at our first assignment, the place was in chaos, and they didn't even know what to do with us, so we just decided for them. Don't worry, Naruto assured them, we'll make it clear that neither of you two knew anything about this. What possessed you to do it in the first place? Tenten asked, you had to know you would get caught eventually. It just felt like something I had to do, Naruto replied honestly. I am sorry I won't be able to return you to your captain, but maybe they'll be able to locate him at the base. You should be more worried about yourself, she snapped back, surprising Naruto with the force of her reply. You could have ruined a promising career with your decision if you don't follow the rules. You're no better than a bounty hunter, no matter how many pirates you capture. Having said her piece, she stormed off and went below deck without even giving him a chance to reply. Naruto was still stunned by the strength of her reaction. He certainly wasn't expecting praise, but that seemed a bit much to him. And now the party was really dreading, with Tenten practically biting his head off. He could only imagine how Nezuko would react to this. After all, her sister's life was on the line. I guess I owe you an even larger apology, he told Nezuko. I got your hopes up, and now I won't be able to do anything for your sister. Don't worry about it, she answered without a hint of recrimination. I'm sure you did the best you could, and it's not like you would have been able to do anything for her if you hadn't taken this ship. Besides, Nami is resourceful, I'm sure she'll be fine. Okay, now he was really confused. The person he was just giving a ride to was furious with him, and the one with a sister head failed to save wasn't upset at all. I just want to remind you, this was all your idea, Kiba declared. Kiba, on the other hand, was completely predictable. Maybe it was just women being naturally incomprehensible. 0000 D5 base, Paradise. Grand Line. Finally, they had docked their ship next to the marine vessel that had been leading them. All 5 of them disembarked, finding the captain of the other ship already waiting for them on the docks. Welcome to G5 base, he told them. G5 was definitely the largest base Naruto had seen since leaving Marineford. It was a large complex of buildings, at least 10 based on what he could see. There were also a dozen marine ships currently docked and a few more visible patrolling the area. It had a much more rustic look than Marineford, though, rather than being nothing but buildings and pavements, he could see several open fields, and there were numerous trees and bushes growing, with many marines relaxing under the former. Even a couple of picnics seemed to be going on. This hardly looked like the sort of discipline he would expect in the middle of a marine base. Didn't they have work they could be doing? Following the marine officer in the base, Naruto grew nervous every moment. He was aware of the consequences of going AWOL. Tenten was right, no matter how boring it would have been, he should have just stayed on Shell Island. If he'd just been patient and worked hard, eventually things would have worked out. But he couldn't take back what he'd done. Now he'd just have to hope he wasn't kicked out of the Marines. I wish I could say it was a pleasure to be here, Naruto replied, but given the circumstances, I'm afraid that isn't true. The captain let out a deep laugh at his reply. I won't hold that against you, he told Naruto. Now if all of you will follow me, we can get this over with. Maybe when afterward y'all have a chance to relax and enjoy the area. Yeah, we'll have plenty of time to relax in prison, Kiba muttered. That may very well be, the man answered, letting out another laugh. I'm not actually a marine, Nezuko pointed out. Am I even allowed in the base? Don't worry about it, he replied casually. No one's going to care. The 5 of them were led into a large building in the center of the complex, where they were directed to sit down in a lobby area. There were a number of tables set up around the room, and the 4 humans selected one and sat, with Akamaru lying on the floor nearby. Just wait here, and the boss will be with you soon enough, they were told, before the man left them to themselves. Great, more waiting, Naruto complained. And they were waiting for more than an hour with nothing more interesting than the occasional marine passing by. Naruto and Kiba's collective anxiety had put a pole over the table that had stifled any conversation. The waiting had become so unbearable that it was quite a relief when a Marine who looked to be in his 30s approached them. "Hey there folks," he greeted, "the name's Carl. I hear rumor that y'are the kids who stole a ship to go off on a joyride." Carl was a thickly muscled man with a shaved head. He appeared to be deliberately going for a tough guy look, but his efforts were somewhat hindered by his less than intimidating height that fell almost half a foot short of Naruto's own. "It's not like that," Kiba yelled, jumping angrily to his feet. "We were out ridding East Blue of its pirates." "Don't lie to me, kid," Carl told him. "You do know the Marines keep records of who turned in any pirates with bounties on them, right? Like Buggy the Clown, Don Krieg, and Krieg's first officer Jin. You were the one who captured Don Krieg." Tenten asked him. "I guess I shouldn't be surprised with how easily you handled Buggy the Clown." "Also," Carl added, "we also heard you broke out of jail and assault a couple of Marines under Captain Izumi Kaiten." "Hold on there," Naruto protested out loud. "We didn't broke out of jail and assault any Marines." "Yeah," Kiba agreed. "Nezumi authorized us to go after Straw Hat Luffy in exchange for military pardons. And who is going to believe who?" A deep voice announced from right behind Naruto, startling him. It wasn't often he ran into someone who could sneak up on him like that. "Rear Admiral Kakashi Haddock, sir," Carl called out, jumping to his feet and giving a salute. Naruto, Kiba and Tenten quickly followed suit, standing at attention. The Rear Admiral was a slender, silver-haired man. Not much was visible of his face, with a mask covering his mouth and nose, and an eye patch over his left eye. It caused Naruto's imagination to run wild at what kind of injury would prompt him to cover so much. "Please, be seated," Kakashi ordered them. The five of them complied without question. "Not you, Carl," Kakashi said to the bald man who had retaken his own seat. "This has nothing to do with you." "Sorry, sir," Carl apologized, quickly getting to his feet and scurrying off. "I apologize for making you wait so long," Kakashi told them, "but a pirate who had a grudge against me snuck into the base and took me hostage." "Who was he?" Tenten asked, as shocked as Naruto that a pirate would do something so brazen. "Who was who?" Kakashi asked. "The pirate that took you captive," Tenten replied. "Oh, I guess I'm not used to people believing my excuses," the Rear Admiral told them. "I'm afraid I hadn't thought that far ahead." None of their group knew how to respond to that, so they simply waited for Kakashi to continue. Instead, he took a small orange book out of a coat pocket and began to read it silently as he stood there. After they'd been sitting patiently for about a minute, Naruto finally worked up the nerve to interrupt. "Excuse me, sir," he said hesitantly. "I believe there was something you wanted to discuss with us." "I wouldn't think y'all'd want to rush me," Kakashi answered, but did put his book away. "As I was saying, who is going to believe who? 2 Marine recruits that gone AWOL or a Marine officer? According to Nezumi's report, you two resist arrest and escape jail at the 16th branch in the East Blue." "We didn't resist arrest," Naruto protested. "Captain Nezumi authorized us to go after Straw Hat Luffy in exchange for military pardons." "Captain Nezumi reports say otherwise," Kakashi disagreed. "It seemed to be he was using you to settle a score with Straw Hat Luffy without getting his hands dirty. Plus he does not has the authority to grant you military pardons, only vice admirals and up does. You should never have trusted a word from Nezumi." Naruto knew the Rear Admiral was right. He should never have trusted Nezumi Kaiten Sr. He should have known better. The man was no better or worse as rat and a scumbag like his son. "Excuse me, Rear Admiral Kakashi," Nejiko speaks up, "but Captain Nezumi Kaiten is no saint. He is corrupt as a rotten apple." "You mean like Nezumi accepted bribes from Arlong to keep the Marines from investigating the crimes of the Arlong pirates?" Kakashi asked. How did you know that?" Nejiko slowly asked with a surprised tone. "Although the East Blue Sea is not my jurisdiction," the Rear Admiral told her, "I had some trusted spies and informants in the East Blue Sea who informed me of events and characters, from Nezumi taking bribes from Arlong to the Straw Hat Pirates battling the Arlong pirates. I already assembles enough evidences to give to the Marine Inspector General to have Nezumi arrested under charges of bribery, corruption, and negligence of duty." Also, the Rear Admiral added, "I had an agent in Lowtown who told me of the events. When I heard you were there, I figured you'd be heading for the Grand Line shortly, and since you don't have a Marine ship, I knew that would be the only route you could take." "You seem very well informed," Nejiko told him, finally breaking her silence. "You look almost nervous," Kakashi replied. "Is there something you're worried I might know?" "Nejiko hasn't done anything, sir," Naruto interrupted. "I take full responsibility for everything that happened." "And do you have anything to add, Ensign Kiba?" he asked. "I was fully aware of the actions I took," Kiba said firmly. "That said, it was all Naruto's idea." Akamaru stood up and barked at Kiba accusingly. "What?" "I told him he'd say that when he talked me into this," he told the dog defensively. "Sir, if I might add something," Tenten interjected, "their methods may have been wrong, but you can't ignore the good they've done. They left East Blue a much safer place than they found it." Tenten had come to his defense. After verbally ripping him to shreds when Shed found out about this, Just right, Kakashi said, the two of you deserve to be thrown out of the Marines, but your results speak for themselves. I'd rather not lose two officers of your ability, so I'm going to just consider this matter settled. Really, sir? Naruto asked hopefully. There is a price, however, Kakashi told them. I'm not about to let you run around doing whatever you want anymore. From now on, you work for me, understood? Yes, sir, Kiba and Naruto said nearly in unison. Good, because I have a mission already lined up for you, the Rear Admiral continued. We've been receiving reports of citizens disappearing within this local region of the Grand Line. Based on information we've received, all the kidnappings pinpointed in location called Rabbit Island. Do you have an eternal pose to Rabbit Island? Naruto asked. No, Kakashi responded. We don't have any eternal poses that go directly to Rabbit Island, but if you wait for an hour on Gunsmith Island, a regular log pose will lock onto it. Due to your ship not being a marine ship, it will be easier for conduct your investigation secretly. Very well, sir, said Naruto. When do you want us to begin? You can start now, said Kakashi. You'll be in command of the mission, Naruto. I'd like you to stay on the crew, as well as Ensign Tenten. Oh, and you're welcome to take the young lady there if she wants to go. You mean I can stay, even if I'm not a marine? Najiko questioned him to be sure. You can stay as long as you young lady, Kakashi responded. I'll have an eternal pose sent to your ship. Ask Mary to find the quartermaster for you if you need any other supplies before you leave. Oh, and good luck, Lieutenant. Sir? Naruto asked. You heard me correctly, Kakashi replied. Wow, avoiding punishment was more than had expected, but a promotion too. Thank you, sir, Naruto said enthusiastically. I'll do my best to deserve this honor. Sir, said Kiba as he got the Rear Admiral's attention hopefully. What about me? Didn't you just say it was all Naruto's idea? Kakashi asked in reply. Kiba's silent fuming was the icing on the cake for a day that had already made a dramatic turn for the better. Look on the bright side, Naruto teases Kiba, at least you're not court-martial. Akamaru barked in agreement with Naruto. Shut up. Kiba snapped. 0000. Naruto had been busy loading supplies and preparing their ship for departure. In addition to the eternal pose for Gunsmith Island, they were given a second that lead back to G5. They'd also been given a Den Mushi that would allow them to communicate with the base, should the need arise. But shortly after the sun had set, G5 as well had slipped over the horizon, and with the ship sailing smoothly along, Naruto found himself with some free time on his hands, so he left a clone at the helm and approached Tenten, who was busy practicing marksmanship skills. I'd like to thank you for standing up for me with the Rear Admiral, Naruto told her, especially after how vigorously you expressed your opinion earlier. Oh, that? She asked with a touch of chagrin. I may have overreacted a bit, but only because I expect a lot from you. Still, I really do appreciate it, he said honestly. It takes a lot of courage to stand up to a superior officer, yet you have done it for my sake when you hardly even know me. I did owe you several favors, she replied. I'm just glad I had the chance to pay one back. Naruto didn't feel like he was owed any favors by the young woman, stopping Buggy and winning that naval exercise. Both of those cases were done more for his own sake. Helping her had simply been an unintended benefit. She, on the other hand, had stuck her neck out for him. Now he felt like he was the one who owed her. Well, Naruto begin. Have you given a thought of learning Rakushiki? I don't know, Tenten reply. Hand-to-hand combat is not my style. Marksmanship is my primary element. I could teach a thing or two on Rakushiki techniques, says Naruto. You can be adaptive in battle in addition to your marksmanship skills. You may have a point, Tenten agreed. I think learning Soro and Kami-e might help sharpen my speed, agility and mobility in the battle. Just then, two marine officers that were around Naruto's age steps on the ship. One has narrow brown eyes and a typical expression suggesting he is either bored or irritated. He has shoulder-length black hair tied in a spiky ponytail. The other one was a rot unbilled and markings on his cheeks in the form of swirls. He has spiky, light brown hair that sticks to waist length. Is this the ship of Naruto Namikaze? He asked in a bored tone. It is, says Naruto, and who are you two? My name is Lieutenant Shikamaru Nara, he introduces himself. Rear Admiral Kakashi sends me to serve on your ship as your navigator. And my name is Ensign Chimjai Akimichi. The other also tells his name. I'm here to be your ship's cook. Cook? Naruto repeated, startled. You're a marine cook. That right, says Choji. Is there a problem with that? Before Naruto could answer, it was without warning Kiba, Akamaru, and Najiko finally came back to the ship. They noticed the two new arrivals, and Kiba asked, who are you guys? My name is Lieutenant Shikamaru Nara. Shikamaru introduced himself. Rear Admiral Kakashi sends me to serve on your ship as your navigator, and this here is Ensign Chimjai Akimichi, your marine cook of the ship. Is that so? Kiba responded, sorry to break the bad news, but we already have Najiko as our cook. Shikamaru stared at Najiko for a moment before he says, a woman cook. How troublesome. Excuse me? Najiko reacted, looking angry, but do you have something against women? Yeah, Shikamaru replied, they are the immense burden in life. Immense burden in life? Tenten repeated, also getting angry. You don't look to have a marine uniform, says Choji. I'm not a marine, says Najiko. I was just hired to be a cook on this ship. If she is a civilian then she has no place on this ship, Shikamaru pointed out. She's only going to burden us as dead weight. Dead weight. Najiko repeated, getting angry, "I'll show ya." Naruto stops Najiko before he faces Shikamaru and sternly asked, although Najiko is a civilian, she allows on this ship and the rear admiral improved it. How do we know she isn't going to be in the way? Shikamaru questioned Naruto on the subject. We are a marine ship in the expertise of hunting pirates. If battle start, she will be an easier target for pirates, even if we allow on the ship. Don't worry, Naruto says, I made a decision to train her. Trained her? Tenten repeated, looking at Naruto. Trained me? Najiko repeated, looking at Naruto. Yeah, Naruto says, trying justified his words. I want everyone on this ship to be ready and well trained for action. That why I'm going teach Hiraki Shiki, alongside Tenten. Can she keep up? Shikamaru persisted, handle combat training. I can take it, Najiko replied giving Shikamaru a fierce look. I'm tough enough to handle anything Naruto taught me. If you say so, Shikamaru says, the last thing we need is dead weight on this ship and that it will be troublesome. After Shikamaru left, Tenten asked what the hell is that guy's problem? Does he hate women? Don't mind Shikamaru, Choji defend his friend, he doesn't hate women, he respects women, yet he feels intimidated by them. Intimidate? Kiba repeated. Well, Shikamaru has experiences with the women he knows back home, Choji told them. From his point of view, he sees them as aggressive, demanding, and sometimes even scary. I like to give him reason to be intimidate, Najiko bitterly complained. Me too, Tenten agreed. Although I already have a cook, you don't mind if Najiko work alongside with you in the kitchen? Naruto asked Choji. Hey, I don't mind, says Choji, 2 cooks are better than 1. That's nice to hear that, says Naruto, let's sail off. 0000. Gunsmith Island, Paradise. Grand Line. It took a few days for them to reach Gunsmith Island. Upon arriving, all they had to do is wait a couple of hours before the Eternal Pose set them course to Rabbit Island. Kiba took the opportunity to relax in his room, since they got nothing else to do but wait. But he also has an opportunity to listen to the music of Yuta, a world-famous diva. Kiba has been a huge fan of Yuta since day one. Her singing voice has been appraised as otherworldly, enough to grant her the title of the world's greatest diva. He seems to can't stop listening to her breakout hit, New Genesis, which was so popular. He been so lost in Yuta's song, he didn't hear Naruto and Kiba entered his room. Kiba? Naruto shouted out loud, Kiba? Are you hearing me? Kiba turned around and was surprised to see the 2 of them in his room, stopping Yuta's music. He responded, are you talking to me? Naruto recognized the listening and asked him confusedly, are you listening to New Genesis? Yeah. Kiba replied, you got a problem with that? No, Naruto replied, I didn't think you would be the type to be a fan of Yuta. I'm fan of Yuta, Tenten added, are you surprised as well? Everybody is a fan of Yuta, Kiba says, my sister, my mom, everyone. And even you. Naruto hesitated for a moment until Kiba realized it and reacted, wait a second, don't you know who Yuta is? I know who it is, Naruto replied, it's just that I don't listen to her music that much. Now that's surprising, Tenten responded, looking at Naruto with shock, you never listened to Yuta even once. Now is not the time. Naruto retorts, trying to brush the problem aside, we got work to do. What is it so important to stop me from listening to Yuta? Kiba complained as he and Akamaru and Tenten follows Naruto to the deck of the ship. Naruto had been bad enough when he was just a self-proclaimed captain, now that he legitimately outranked him, he was going so far as to drag him from his Yuta's music for some pointless patrol. I saw the Straw Hat Pirates ship, the Going Merry, Naruto told Kiba, but I don't think they've spotted us yet. You sure? Kiba asked, are they here on Gunsmith Island? I just spot their ship arriving a few minutes ago, says Naruto, this is the perfect chance to arrest and capture them. I don't think so. Shikamaru says, who appears out of nowhere with Choji at his side, have you forgotten? We're in the middle of a mission to Rabbit Island. I know that, said Naruto, but this is opportunity I'm not going to miss. Yeah, Kiba agreed, not to mention they kidnapped Najiko's sister. Najiko's sister is kidnapped. Choji reacted before he said, well, what are we waiting for? Let's go do our jobs. I think me, Kiba, Tenten, and Akamaru will handle the Straw Hat Pirates, Naruto told them. I need the 2 of you to stay here and keep an eye on Najiko. You sure you don't need our help? Choji asked. Shikamaru and I also had devil fruit powers and are good fighters. We can't just confront and arrest any pirate that cross our path. Shikamaru protested, don't forget, we have about 20 minutes until the Eternal Pose leads us to Rabbit Island. The last thing we need is fighting a pirate only worth 30 million berries when we're on an important mission. I can handle Luffy, Naruto told Shikamaru, I have seen his powers, his fighting skills, and knows his attitude, I'm confident that I can defeat him. Shikamaru stared at Naruto for a moment before said, you're confident? I am, Naruto replied. Are you sure? Shikamaru persisted with the question. I say I am, Naruto repeated, getting annoyed. I know we just met, but you need to have faith in my abilities. You're right, we just met, says Shikamaru, but you should never underestimate your opponent or overestimate yourself. You want know who says that? Your father, the Yellow Flash. I know what those words means, Naruto retort, getting more annoyed. I heard them before from my father before he died. Shikamaru says nothing but kept giving Naruto a doubtful and suspicious look. As they left the ship, Naruto Gunsmith Island looks like a big place. It's going to take all day to find them. How about me and Akamaru handle this, Kiba says. We're considered the best trackers and hunters from our native island, and we already got the Straw Hat pirate sense. You can track them down through smell alone. Naruto asked. Just give the word, and we'll be on the Straw Hats before they know it, Kiba assumed his words. Alright then, Naruto agrees with Kiba's decision, just do your thing then. Kiba and Akamaru walk towards the Straw Hat pirate ship. They begin sniffing the ground and air around the ship to pick up the pirate scent. Once they did, they begin to follow the scent into town. With Naruto and Tenten not so far behind them, they begin feel stir up as the scent was getting stronger, which mean they were getting closer. It was when they finally reached their destination. Sure enough, they were only 40 feet away or so. He saw Luffy, that Usopp kid, and the blonde chef. It was only the throng of people on the pier that had prevented them from spotting the group earlier. He didn't see any sign of Zoro or his two bounty hunter friends, but the group appeared to be standing there chatting with two young women. Do you think one of those girls is Nami? Kiba asked while moving away from the corner to let Naruto look. Maybe the blue-haired girl. Tenten suggested, the hair color might run in the family. No, I think it's the other one, Naruto replied. I can't see it clearly from here, but I got a glimpse of a tattoo on her arm that looked similar to Nezuko's. So what's the plan? Kiba asked. He didn't have much experience dealing with a hostage situation, so he wasn't sure what the best way to proceed would be. I'm going to go in alone and distract them, Naruto answered. Kiba, while their attention is on me, I want you to sneak up behind them and get Nami out of there. Understood, Kiba replied. And once she's safely away, we capture the rest of them, Naruto finished resolutely. Giving them each a final look, he must have been satisfied with what he'd seen from them. Nodding, he ran out of the alley and toward the pirates, running right past their group. He turned around and confronted Luffy, who immediately recognized him. Ah, Naruto, Luffy said cheerfully. I've been thinking about it, and am kind of jealous of your power. You know how when there's beef over here and chicken over there, and you can't decide which one to eat first. You could just make a copy and eat both at the same time. Actually my clones don't eat, Naruto correct. Ah, Luffy answered knowingly, they're mysterious copies. That boy was just as strange as Kiba remembered, but their group looked sufficiently distracted, so Kiba began to make his way through the crowd toward where Nami was standing. You never told me you were a pirate, Naruto replied, accusation clear in his voice. I didn't. Luffy asked, well, I'm telling you now, I'm going to be the Pirate King. Pirates? A passerby asked worriedly. They're pirates. The word quickly spread as panicked civilians cleared out of the area as fast as they could. The press of people going the other direction was making it difficult for Kiba to move forward, and once they were gone, his cover would be too. He'd have to move quickly when that happened, or he'd be spotted the first time one of them turned around. You won't be if I have anything to say about it, Naruto insisted. I'm taking you down right here. So you want to be the Pirate King too? Luffy responded, I guess that makes us rivals, that's fine, but I'm not going to lose to you. Kiba had finally reached the girl he assumed was Nami and grabbed her from behind, putting a hand over her mouth to prevent her from screaming. I'm here to help you, he whispered in her ear to calm her down. But she was anything but calm, grabbing the arm he had over her mouth. She twisted and threw Kiba over her shoulder so that he landed flat on his back. What are you doing? He accusingly yelled, propping himself up into a sitting position. I'm trying to rescue you. The only person I need rescuing from is you. She yelled back. Had he gone after the wrong girl? Maybe it was the blue-haired one after all, but said girl was now coming at him with some sort of spinning weapon tied to ring on her finger. She didn't look any more eager to be rescued than her orange-haired companion. He heard Akamaru bark a warning at him and instinctively jumped to the side, avoiding a small explosion where he'd just been sitting. He turned to see Usopp had just fired something at him, but the odd thing was it had come from a slingshot. What kind of a pirate used a slingshot? Akamaru had moved past Kiba and was now approaching the long-nosed boy, growling as he did. Nice doggy, Usopp said nervously. I'm not going to hurt you, look him putting the weapon down. Kiba saw Akamaru relax a bit as the boy slowly lowered his slingshot to the ground, but that had been just what Usopp had been waiting for, as in a split second he loaded and fired off a shot at the dog. Tamago Bashi. The projectile flew toward Akamaru, hitting him directly in the face. The dog immediately let out a yelp of distress and began to run around frantically pawing at his nose. What did you do to Akamaru? Kiba yelled angrily at the boy. Not even waiting for an answer, he charged Usopp, intent on avenging his partner, but Akamaru cut him off, looking him directly in the eye. Kiba had been with Akamaru for so long, he could almost always figure out what his partner was trying to tell him, and this time there was no doubt at all. His eyes clearly said that this one was his. Nodding to Akamaru, he looked around for a new target. Naruto looked to have claimed Luffy already, so he should probably help out Tenten. The other ensign had charged in and was surrounded by all 3 of the remaining pirates, and that was probably more than she could handle. Locking onto the blue-haired girl, he charged her, quickly ducking under a swipe she made with that weapon of hers. Grabbing her weapon arm, he was able to halt the spinning. He was about to finish her when a kick from Sanji on his arm forced him to release the girl. "I won't let you harm so much as a hair on Vivi's head," he promised. But back in his own fight, Kiba stumbled a bit, surprised that his most recent attempt to pummel the blonde chef hadn't come close to hitting anything. The cause was that his intended target had already taken off running the short distance to where Tenten was fighting. He made it just in time to kick away the guns out of Tenten's hands. "Thanks, Sanji," she told her savior, "now pay her back for trying to kill me." "I'm sorry Nami," the chef replied, "but I could never hit a lady." "Hiya. You're so frustrating," she yelled at him, turning to run to where her staff had landed after being knocked away. Without warning, Tenten unleashed a brutal kick straight between Sanji's legs. Sanji howls in pain and fell to his knees, holding his family's jewel. "Chivalry is going to get you killed one day," Tenten told Sanji before she turns her attention in chasing after Nami and Vivi. This seems to give Kiba a perfect opportunity, charging at Sanji from behind and treated the man to a kick of his own. With a powerful punt, he hit the side of Sanji's neck, following through with emotion. The cook went spinning sideways down the dock, coming to a stop less than a foot from the edge of the water. This wasn't going to be a good day for the man, but at least his luck had kept him from drowning. But now that he was down, they shouldn't have any trouble finishing off the 2 girls. He follows after Tenten, who was chasing after the 2 girls that had reached the Straw Hat ship, the Going Merry. However, Tenten has already caught up with them and wasted no time going after Nami, who was trying to put a futile resistance. "Zoro," Nami yelled out in desperation, "wake up and get down here, you worthless idiot. We're under attack." But her pleas for help went unanswered, and Kiba returned his attention to Vivi. She had pulled a second one of those weapons from somewhere and was now wielding one with each hand. Kiba would have to approach this carefully. Dodging several of her assaults, he finally saw an opening. One attack went wide, and before she could recover, he dashed into her guard, ducking under the follow-up swing from her other hand. With nothing left to stop him, he planted his fist into her gut, knocking Vivi flat on her rear, gasping from the blow. "Do you surrender or should I continue?" Kiba asked her smugly. "I held back, but I can hit a lot harder than that." "Interesting," she answered when she was able to speak again, "but how are you at taking blows?" That was an odd response. Was it supposed to be some kind of a threat? Suddenly he found himself flying through the air, only then registering a throbbing pain in the side of his head. In his dazed state, he attempted a controlled landing, but wasn't very successful as he plowed through a street stall of some type. After taking a few moments to collect himself, he stood up to see Sanji standing there, only just lowering his foot from the kick that had been the cause of Kiba's involuntary flight. "They'll never forgive any man that hits a woman," the chef declared angrily. "Now prepare yourself, because this fight is about to get serious." 0000. Naruto watched Kiba slam into the ground after his failed rescue attempt. He never should have trusted Kiba with that task. Nami probably thought he was some kind of pervert grabbing her like that. Well, he'd have to leave that situation to his crew. He still had Luffy to deal with, so he took a stance and prepared to fight. "You don't have a weapon?" Luffy asked. "You can't hurt me with your fists, you know." "Are you sure about that?" Naruto replied, "You should be very careful of underestimating me and overestimating yourself." This could be a good chance to use his Tekai to demoralize his opponent. The boy was used to being invulnerable to blunt attacks. Let's see how he liked a taste of his own medicine. "Of course I can," Luffy insisted. "I'm the rubber man. Your power is to make mysterious copies. Did you forget what your power was or something?" "Then go ahead and try," Naruto challenged. "Give me your best shot." "Gomu Gomu no pistol. Tekai." Luffy shot a long rubber fist at Naruto, who was just in time to use his Tekai in absorbing the impact. "Eh?" Luffy asked, "Why didn't that work?" "I'm not the one who forgot my power. Am I?" "No, my arms just stretched, so I must be a rubber man, eh? Thinking about this is too confusing. I'm just going to hit you harder." Not for the first time, Naruto had to wonder if this kid was actually this stupid or just messing with his mind. "Gomu Gomu no rifle. Tekai." Luffy twists his arm around as he stretches it behind him and hits Naruto at close range, massively increasing the velocity of the punch as twisting the arm stretches the arm even further without having to draw it back any longer, which also saves the amount of time the kickback takes. Naruto grunted when it hit, but managed to avoid giving off any other sign of how hard the blow had been. That punch was like being hit by one of Garp's cannonballs. No, it might even be stronger, since he had little doubt, had improved the strength of his Tekai since then, but he could still handle it, and soon Luffy would realize how hopeless it was. "Gomu Gomu no Gatling. Tekai." Luffy sends a rapid stream of punches after Naruto, but Naruto only grinned. He could hit him with as many of those as he wanted, neither was as strong as that rifle of his, so he could easily handle them, and Luffy seemed to be getting very frustrated by the situation. Is that the best you got? Naruto mocked Luffy. Gomu Gomu no bazooka. Tekai. With all his might, Luffy pulled back for a giant double-handed punch. This was the strongest attack Naruto had seen Luffy use against Krieg. If he could resist this, his opponent should be demoralized, but moment Luffy's attack touches him, he felt almost the whole air left his body, and the force of the attack sends crashing into the building. Yeah, Luffy mocked back, that's the best I got. Rising from the debris, Naruto began to feel annoyed by Luffy's words, yet, even more annoying than his words, Naruto couldn't help but feel angry of the fact that his Tekai could not withstand Luffy's attack. While he knew Luffy was strong, he was much stronger than all those blue sea pirates he fought in captures. Not to mention his devil fruit powers make him extremely durable to physical blows, but he would still win the fight. His fists may not hurt his opponent, but let's see how much fight he had in him after Naruto had tied that rubber body of his into a knot. Ah, no fair, Usopp, Luffy